Our story begins with our protagonist being kicked out of his job. "Mr. Han, you're no longer fit for this position." "Goodbye," says the boss. Confused, he replies, "Oh, okay." As he leaves the room, the guy says, "If we find a spot for you, we'll send you a message." The woman asks if he wants her to call a taxi for him, to which he declines. Our protagonist gets up, leaves, and sees them talking outside. The guy mentions hearing that the protagonist went to the same school as the company's owner, yet while the owner runs the company, this failure is getting fired here. Furthermore, he's been betrayed by his girlfriend. He adds, "I don't even know how Mr. Du had the guts to give this guy a position." The protagonist hangs his head. This was his last chance. Helping, caring for others, these things only make you seem kind, but in reality, following them, he became a failure. The scene cuts to him catching a subway. This is the unstoppable routine of a model citizen. Wake up, catch the metro, go to work, return exhausted. Standing on the metro, he contemplates that it would be better if everything ended soon. The train is approaching and he's thinking about ending it all. Suddenly, the lights go out. He looks around. What? A blackout. No, not quite. He realizes as the complaint system activates. Beginner package, use all your points to fulfill a wish. Our protagonist is a manga enthusiast and is familiar with the system. He just wants to know if this is real. If so, the only thing he'd wish for is to go back in time. He wants to go back to the beginning and become someone successful instead of just being a nice guy. However, when he opens his eyes, he sees a train. But this time, he's inside it and younger. Startled, he wonders, did I go back in time? He looks beside him and sees a wonderful girl. He's startled. It's Yanfei. She looks at him and asks, "Are you talking to me?" "What's up?" He says, "No, I just wanted to ask where we are." He thinks, why is the goddess of my school sitting in front of me? That's when he remembers August 30, 2013 and how he acted that day. He says, "Hey, beautiful, do you remember me?" She responds, "Yeah, we went to the same school, right?" He asks if she's also registering for college. She confirms. Our guy informs her that she's heading in the wrong direction. She asks, but isn't this train going to Jiangxing?" He sits down, adjusts his glasses, and says, "Yes, this train is going to Jiangxing. But what I mean is, you've entered my heart." She's speechless. He moves closer, showing signs of being a natural harasser. She tells him not to come closer. He replies, "Relax, this meeting is our destiny." At that moment, she shouts, "Shao gang, there's a pervert here with me." The guy arrives, telling the pervert to get lost. This is all a memory of the first time he lived this day. He grabs instant noodles thinking, "I'll just eat to calm down." The guy with Yanfei teases him, calling him poor for eating instant noodles. Our protagonist looks and thinks, this guy is as arrogant as ever. If it were the old me, I'd argue. But I'm not the same as before. He heats his noodles without caring. Just then, the consumer system activates. He sees his status window with bars for knowledge, appearance, and some other attributes. What's all this? I don't want an artifact not to invest points, he thinks. He sees the skills he had and realizes he was garbage at this time. The system hints, spend money to upgrade your skills. Our protagonist finds it strange that he has the ability to maneuver twice, but the second maneuver is about pleasuring himself. However, he's not interested in that now. He only thinks, with this system, he'll live the life he always dreamed of. He'll be an insane guy. The guy next to him asks, "Bro, have you heated your noodles?" He thinks spending money isn't the problem. The problem is having money to spend. So first he needs to figure out how he's going to make money. Returning to his seat, the guy is talking to Yanfei. "Hey babe, I'll take you somewhere fancy," he says. She prefers noodles. He tries to peek at her phone and she elbows him, saying, "Back off, mind your own business, damn it." Our protagonist laughs at him. The guy realizes this and asks if he's laughing at him. Our protagonist replies that he isn't. The guy says, "I'm her boyfriend. You can't laugh at our business." She stares at him again and says, "Just let me eat my noodles already." Our protagonist thinks this guy has always been and always will be a simp. A few minutes later, they finished their noodles. She had gone out to buy a snack and returned, but unfortunately, it was already sold out. Our protagonist pulls some chicken drumsticks out of his pocket. She asks how much they cost and says, "I'll pay for it, relax." He quotes the original price of $2.50. She says she doesn't have change and tells him to keep the 3. He says she's kind and gives her an orange as compensation for the 50 cents difference. She says he's very polite and he's already fallen for her. Her smile is enchanting. Until the simp appears and says, "I have money. If you wanted to eat, you could have just asked me to buy it instead of accepting oranges from others." She tells him not to be rude and asks why he's shouting. But the guy doesn't stop and continues, "I said I'd take you to the restaurant. Why did you buy this guy's snack?" She stands up and asks, "Do you really care about me?" Everyone on the train starts to look and she leaves. The boyfriend asks where she's going. She says she's going to the trash and doesn't want to talk to him anymore. The guy gets angry, looks at our protagonist and says, "Hey, get up," grabbing his collar and throwing him to the ground, shouting, "This is all your fault, you damn four-eyed loser." He wants to kick our boy, who's already spitting blood. He didn't expect his body to be this weak, but he won't let it slide. He gets up thinking, "I was worried about where my first income would come from. You'll be my first benefactor." The scene cuts to some time later. Yanfei is asking how he is, what happened. The doctor says, "The boy's reflex is gone. He's in a coma." "How did you fall into a coma? Are you the king of acting?" The doctor continues, his brain was severely damaged. He needs to be taken to the hospital now. Our protagonist is thinking the guy didn't hold back and it hurt a lot. He threw me to the ground and said, "If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been embarrassed in front of her." Our protagonist says that this guy only knew how to resolve everything with violence. The simp says, "What did you say? Repeat that." Our protagonist looks at him, calling him useless, and even thanks him for the conversation he had with his girlfriend. With that, he takes another punch, and at that moment, everyone on the train tries to hold the simp back, telling him to stop. But the guy doesn't stop punching our boy. Just then, the waifu appears and asks what he's doing. Desperately, he says, "Sorry." When he looks at our protagonist, he's smiling, calling him trash. She pushes the fool aside and asks our boy if he's okay, who says he's feeling really bad and passes out. She shouts for doctors. The simp tries to explain the story to the policeman, saying our protagonist was pretending. But everyone on the train said it was a lie, just because this guy was talking to his girlfriend. He didn't like it and beat up the boy. Everyone is on our boy's side. But waifu is even sad and thinks, "It's my fault he got involved in this." She's sad for involving our protagonist. The simp is there, explaining himself, "Don't arrest me. He provoked me, man." The guard says, "Enough. Everyone here is given testimony. The facts won't be denied. Why didn't you think straight while hitting him, huh? Do you think you have a lot of money? This is all your responsibility." He runs to Yanfei and says, "Yanfei, please help me. Say something. You know I'm not like this." But she pushes his hand away. He then says he's going to call his dad. His father answers and asks, "Where are you? What happened?" He tells the whole story while crying. Back to when the protagonist was waking up and said, "My mouth hurts a lot." Yanfei's on top of him asking, "How do you feel? Where does it hurt?" The protagonist knows is already bleeding, obviously. She asks, "Why is it bleeding? Did it hurt that much?" He says he's okay, just that she's too hot. "Nope, you didn't say that." Our protagonist gives her a slight stare and thinks she really is a goddess. Just look at her face. She says, "We're almost at the station. I'll take you to the hospital." Our boy says he's fine, but she informs him that he lost a tooth. He puts his hand on his face and thinks, "I'm glad I lost that tooth. I was afraid it was just scratches." He then says aloud, "I'll have to do some exams." It's clear he's planning to extort the cuckold. But waifu is standing thinking he's really a lunatic. How can he hit someone like that out of nowhere? What if something bad happened to him? As he was leaving the hospital, he hugs her and says, "Thank you, you truly are the school goddess. So beautiful, so kind." She even says, "I didn't even know you were from my school. Now I understand why you seem so familiar." The protagonist falls and says, "The goddess remembers me. I am honored." She awkwardly says, "Wow, even in this state you praise me." He tells her, "This makes me think I need to hit the gym more. Taking a beating alone is no problem, but what if this situation was to protect someone and I couldn't? I have to be tough." She agrees it's good he thinks that way, but says he needs to at least know how to defend himself. Our boy says that guy got what he deserved. Now he'll be detained for a day or two. Since his tooth fell out, this escalated the case to something criminal. That's life. Whoever walks by the river gets their feet wet. Our protagonist's life is pretty good in the hospital. The nurse informs him, "This is a private room just for you. The best medicines and treatments will be provided. You can rest assured." He thanks her but wonders, who could be spending so much money? Probably the simp's family. Our protagonist checks the system and sees he's already earned some points, 20,000 current assets. He understands that, even though he didn't pay for transportation or the hospital, it still counts as his expenses. That's the good life. Just then, someone enters. It's Yanfei again. She doesn't give the boy a second to recover. She comes all cute and returns his glasses. With just that, our protagonist is already imagining the wedding. He puts on his glasses to look at her. He thinks she's so thick with a good personality to match. She knows what's important. He was thinking he even has to thank the simp for this opportunity. She tells our protagonist that her father will arrive soon and asks, "Why don't you give me your number so we can keep in touch?" Our boy obviously gives it right away. Her family enters and she hugs her father all happily. Then another guy who arrives immediately says, "I'm sorry, young man." I'm Shougang's father. I didn't raise my son correctly. My wife and I came to apologize. Our protagonist feels awkward and says it's okay. He doesn't need anything. But the man comes running and tells him, "Don't move, kid. Stay still. You need to recover." The mother is embarrassed. "I spoiled him too much. Luckily, you didn't stoop to his level, but we'll compensate you." Our protagonist says it's partly my fault too. "I know he kicked me, hit me, broke my tooth, made my nose bleed, stepped on me, but I cursed him, right?" The father recommends that he accepts the offer. It's a very high amount, and they can forget all this. Our protagonist takes a peek and asks how much. The father says 800,000 yuan. Is that acceptable? Our protagonist is thinking, how many attribute points can I buy in the system of all this? The old man is confused, asking why he didn't react more. Does he want more? Our protagonist knows the situation he's in is good. The old man's afraid he'll report his son and ruin the guy's career. That's why he's doing everything to keep quiet, but he accepts saying that's a great amount. Now I understand why Yanfei always said she had a very cool uncle, but the nervous guy asks, "But what? If you solve this just with money, you'll prove you're a father not so concerned about your son's education. I think it's important that your son understand that this behavior wasn't correct, or he'll ruin his own life." The guy is still receiving money yet wanting to preach morals. The reluctant father says, "All right, kid, I'll educate him better." Our protagonist is playing with fire and continues threatening that he doesn't want the money, saying, "I really don't need it. I just want him to understand that this behavior will hurt him and his family." The guy starts crying, saying, "I understand. When he's released, I'll bring him here to apologize." The wife says it's okay, and they both leave. Everyone is already in the hallway leaving. Asim's father greets the blonde's father, apologizing for the trouble his son caused. The guy says, "Relax. At least you came quickly and talked to the kid." Everyone leaves. At this moment, the father sees that his daughter isn't very happy and asks what's wrong. She says that Gang was a complete idiot doing that. Outside, the father says at least she's okay. And that guy will now disappear from her life. She says thank goodness and says, if that guy had the maturity of the boy he hit, things wouldn't be like this. The father says, "You seem to have a good opinion of the boy. You met him yesterday, right?" She blushes and says, "No, he's from the same school as me. I just felt embarrassed because he got beaten up because of me, and he seemed like an easygoing guy." "What do you think of him, Dad?" The father is thinking he seems like a mature and responsible boy. And here comes the father with the speech. "My daughter, at your age, boys who are mature like that have suffered a lot. Someone like him prefers success over feelings. I'm sure he has a bright future. But I don't know if he's ready for relationships." The daughter says okay, but he adds, "Well, I just want to remind you that relationships are exhausting. Be careful." She graciously tells him not to worry because she's not interested in dating. Meanwhile, our protagonist is all happy looking at the system. 387,000 points in the bank account. Best of all, the guy spent on him and now he has money to spend again. It's a double win. He falls on the bed and thinks, what do I do? Then he touches his glasses and says, right, I'm nearsighted and I'm toothless. Can this be resolved here? Seeing the options on the system, he remembers being teased about it in his past life. So he wonders, system, can you help with this? They're just seen like in the Matrix. When he opens his eyes are restored. Healthy status. He gets up from the bed, goes to the mirror, and takes off his glasses. Tada! So is this really how I am? Now the boy feels unstoppable. Eyes are called the mirrors of the soul. As a great wise master says, attractive eyes have a clean and beautiful structure with a lovely coloration. Just with this change, my attractiveness went up by 3 points. This shows that one function can influence the others. He receives a message from his friend saying, I really appreciate your help. I'm at the Confucius temple, how about we grab something to eat? He tells her, I'm still toothless. Bring me a book to read. She apologizes for forgetting he's toothless and says she'll bring a book later. The two are very happy. The protagonist made another flirt, saying that if he were there, she wouldn't even have time to eat everything. This protagonist is unstoppable. Her father is even there, wondering why this girl is all smiles. The next day, she really brought a book for him, but it's a really difficult and boring book, and she asks if he didn't like it. He says, it's not that I didn't like it, but why did you bring me such a book? She says she's kidding and hands him a copy of Solo Leveling. He looks and says, I knew you'd understand me. She tells him to get better soon and winks, but suddenly she approaches, and our boy backs away. She says that him taking off the glasses really improved his appearance a lot. The guy was already a bit convinced, and now he'll be even more. And he says, do you think that's all? I'll still improve so much and become even more handsome. She tells him to calm down. Are you thinking the glasses sealed your beauty? He says exactly. A cheeky one. She says that if that's the case, he should never put the seal on again and tells him to prepare because tomorrow she's bringing her father. Our protagonist thinks, why is she talking about her father? The next day, the simp shows up there saying, sorry man, I shouldn't have hit you. I couldn't control my emotions, but it's from the bottom of my heart. Please forgive me. Even the father and mother are moved. Our boy says, I accept your parents really love you, so don't worry them again. The guy is thinking, darn, he really wants to preach morals at me. A while later, a lawyer arrives for him to sign the paperwork and receive the $800,000. Look at this beautiful check. Take it, kid. I hope it never happens again. Our protagonist replies, you're very kind. The guy not only paid for the trip, the room, gave compensation, and everything else. A total of $1.15 million was spent. Now that he has the points, the priority is to raise his attributes. But he thinks he can't just spend everything on attributes. He still has to have money to eat and live. He falls on the bed and thinks, what if I don't spend anything? I just buy a comfortable little house, live comfortably for the rest of my life eating instant noodles. That's when the big friend comes back saying, we're here to see how you're doing. This girl is getting more inflated every time. The father comes and tells him to rest and says, she and I will travel soon, so I brought a little gift. Accept it here. Giving him a bundle of money. The father says it was a problem that involved his daughter too, so he wanted to compensate in some way. This time, our protagonist doesn't want the money and says, I don't want this money. She's a victim just like me. From whoever it is, I don't accept this money. The guy is already grabbing his shoulder. You really are a prodigy among young men. When you come back home, come visit us as a guest. Your grades must be incredible. Your college is close to hers, so I ask you to take care of her. She asked her father not to say these things. Our protagonist is confused, but says he's really at her university. She gets all excited, but he explains that he's in the humanities field, which usually doesn't get much recognition. Everyone is embarrassed. Our boy tells a sad story. When he was young, he thought grades didn't matter, followed a somewhat wrong path, and ended up in this situation. The father and daughter just watch. And our protagonist says that at least he learned from his mistakes, and now the only thing he can do is be better in college. The father says, you're right, kid. You can't be stuck in the past. The important thing is the direction you're going. And that money you received, what are you going to do with it? Start your business. Our boy says not now, but soon he'll become an entrepreneur and sell courses on how to make $800,000. The father congratulates him and leaves. But before he goes, the kid says to him, you're an amazing father. Even in 20 years, I'll remember. I want to be someone like you. The father thanks him and says goodbye, also saying he'll remember. And the friend also leaves happily. Now he's focused. He calls the nurse and says he wants to be discharged. It's time for him to start developing rapidly. He knows that in 2 years, real estate prices will go up a lot, and those who take advantage of the opportunity will be the next billionaires. Already on the bus, heading to the city of dreams, he arrives at the real estate agency, pulls out the black card, and asks about houses of 40 to 60 square meters near a school area that have been built in the last 2 years. The consultant says, there's this one that's priced great. Our king of negotiations says it's that one. His parents dreamed that he would buy a house, and look at him now, in his 20s already buying a house. It looks like he's going to buy 2 houses, but he's going to rent them both out just to cover his monthly expenses. This is the weakest capitalist. He already rented a deluxe presidential suite as soon as he received $100,000. He's all happy, thinking, finally, my new start has begun. At that moment, he realizes he's still toothless. He opens the system and says, restore my tooth. However, the system shows that the cost of the tooth exceeds the current amount, and his command cannot be executed. He needs to level up the system. Some skills are necessary to activate these effects. The user needs to possess at least 3 level 3 skills. First, he needs to reach level 2 since he just spent a lot of money and is full of points. He advances to level 2 and starts shining. He says it's as if his thoughts have become clearer and faster. His mind is overflowing with ideas. There was so much that he even fell to the ground. He gets up after a while with a headache because he absorbed too much information. Some skills like accounting, finance, and marketing show that knowledge is not just about how you think, but also about the accumulation of information you have. One influences the other, and now, by leveling up both, he will become part of the elite. When his phone rings, someone asks, is this student Han? You took a 15-day break, and today is the last day. If you don't return, you'll repeat the year. He tries to extend his break, saying he's still unwell and will return soon. Then he takes another look at the system and discovers that to upgrade an attribute from 70 to 79, it costs 200,000 points per level. And worse, to maximize it to level 5, it costs 10 million. For now, forget it. He has no chance of maximizing anything. He then sees that a new function has been unlocked by leveling up. Every time he spends money, there's a small chance he'll receive gifts related to his consumption. The items will be sent directly to his item bar. Sometime later, our protagonist had returned to college. The girls are all looking at him saying, wow, he's tall. Is he a new student? Our hero is not feeling himself. He took advantage of the system, improved his nose, reduced something here, improved something there, and did a lot of facial adjustments. The e-girls are all crazy about him now. He goes to the principal's office to explain everything that happened. He explains that he was in the hospital for a few days, but he's fine now. He then hands over the hospital certificate. The principal asks if he was really in the hospital and if he brought the documents and money to pay for everything. Our hero says he brought everything while remembering that this guy wasn't a good person. At least he's kind of stupid, so dealing with him is simple. He thanks the teacher for his hard work and asks if he has any idea what the dormitory he'll be staying in is like. The teacher says it's a very lively place. Our protagonist hands over a medical request and says the doctor asked him to rest in a quiet place and we can't stay somewhere with too much commotion. The teacher takes it from him, looks at it, and says, all right, I'll see if I can get a room for a maximum of 4 people for you, but the cost will be higher, kid. Our protagonist remembers that in his past life he stayed in the crazy dormitory 5, full of maniacs, and he doesn't want to go through that again. Especially now that he has the black card that makes life easy. The scene changes to our dear blonde receiving messages from our protagonist, letting her know he arrived at college. They talk for a bit, but nothing serious. He just stares at the system, thinking that his mother will be shocked by how much he's changed. The only problem is that he only has 40,000 left. It's time to at least buy something to eat. As he buys something to eat at the store and leaves, he sees a guy selling something on the ground, so he asks, how much is this? The guy says it's the Manual of Life, 66 Ways to Change Oneself, and it costs only 168 yuan. Our protagonist doesn't think it's worth that much and asks him to lower the price. The guy says he'll do it for 100. Let's say what he's really selling is what the OnlyFans girls sell for 99 cents, but in printed form. At that moment, the system activates. You've purchased a set of life manuals. Activating the gift system, a book suddenly appears in front of him. An ordinary scripture, read it sincerely and you'll increase your intelligence a bit. Our boy is happy because it's expensive to upgrade the attributes, so anything free is perfect. The chubby guy asks if he's okay, but the scene changes to a little later and he's entering a classroom. Some girls are already looking at him sideways. The professor up front says, the last student arrived, go ahead and introduce yourself. Our protagonist remembers that in his past life he lacked confidence, so he felt embarrassed and everyone laughed at him. However, now with all this transformation, he arrives saying, my name is Han Lai and I am from the city of flame, intensity, and fervor. My hometown is the city of dreams. Due to hospitalization, I was delayed, but I'm here. The girls are all impressed and the guys are angry, saying he's full of himself. But the teacher applauds and congratulates him. The girls chatting ask Ching Ching what she thinks of this guy. But our protagonist suddenly says, if there are any single girls in this room, add me to your contacts because I'm easy to please and easy to play with. If you're interested, come talk to me. This guy is a social hazard. Someone stop him. The other guys in the room say he's a jerk who's confident just because he's good looking. The protagonist looks at them and thinks, look at those losers, all mad, but my target is you guys. He sits down and a second later, the flirty girls are already surrounding him. Everyone wants to be part of his group. They're all fighting until one pushes through and taps the table, saying, I'm the class monitor, Shi Lu Ting. First, I need to collect the class fees from you, and then I'll add you to the group. It seems like our protagonist's plan was all just to get this girl to talk to him. She's been considered the goddess of this place for 3 years straight. But as wonderful as she is, he was deceived to the point where he almost had to drop out of college. But this time, he's going to be a great friend. Look at his mischievous face. He's up to something. He teases her, saying, do you want me to join the class group or do you want my number because you're interested in the offer? She gives him an angry look, saying it's just for him to join the class group because she doesn't care about the other option. He replies, all right then, and asks her how much it costs to join the group. She realizes he's just teasing her and wonders if he's just like her. As you can see, this is going to be a very healthy relationship. She then says it costs 200 and he immediately pays, asking, by the way, in this group, will you notify us of the activities? She says, of course, 3 days in advance. Suddenly, there's a hand coming that I thought was going to slap the girls, but it's just a hug. She's hugging her friend and asking our protagonist, do you want me to add you to the class group? He accepts the offer and she says, my name is Yu Yum from the hometown of Jiangmen. Our protagonist says she's very charming and has a beautiful name. Then he looks at his phone and ignores her. She wonders if she did something wrong and tries to start a conversation, asking about the brand of his phone. She's never seen one like it before. He says it's a cheap and crappy phone that asks why she wants to know. The poor girl, confused, thinks he seems so rich with that attitude and asks why he uses that phone. Is it sentimental? He says he uses it because he's poor. She makes a face and leaves. What a weak, materialistic girl. But our protagonist remembers that in his past life, she used to manipulate him. She pretended to like him just to keep getting gifts, but she didn't really want anything. Our protagonist stands up, tired of it all, and the girls ask what he thinks of the class leader. Is she beautiful? He says he doesn't care about outward beauty. He wants to know about her inner beauty. She's just listening from the side. At night, everyone leaves to go up to the dormitories. People ask if he's not going with them, but he says no because his dorm is downstairs and it'll be faster to go down. We then see his roommates. One of them looks over and realizes our protagonist has arrived. He kicks him and says, "Get out of here, loser. Why are you just standing there?" But our protagonist is on point now too, just stares at the guy and says, "Get off my bed and move that chair." But the guy asks what will happen if he doesn't. Our protagonist just ignores him and goes up anyway. He gets up there, opens his backpack, and takes out a hammer. The blonde guy was going to say something, but his friend stops him. He says, "Or did the guy grab a hammer up there? What kind of normal person carries a hammer? It's better not to mess with this crazy guy." The guy sleeping in front of him is afraid of getting hit with a hammer in the middle of the night. The three of them are already leaving the dormitory, afraid of getting their heads smashed. Our protagonist asks where they're going. As they leave the room, they say they're going to see their girlfriends. The protagonist smiles like a psychopath and asks if they really have girlfriends. But then he runs off and our guy thinks he scared them too much, staring at the system, wondering if his decision-making is being influenced by his attributes. If that's the case, he has to work even harder to take advantage of it. The next day, there's a green-haired girl talking about our protagonist saying, "Have you heard about that new guy? He seems to be from a billionaire family." The blonde guy recognizes him as the guy who's sleeping peacefully in the dorms while everyone else is suffering. Then we see the psychopath drinking her juice, and when she looks, she sees our protagonist with his athletic body. He was passing by when the girls greeted him from afar. One of them came up to him and asked, "I heard you're living on the top floor. How did you manage to get a spot there?" Our protagonist apparently doesn't want to talk much to her and says it was luck. The blonde guy is walking around with some other guys talking bad about him, saying, "That jerk, how does he come into the room causing a ruckus?" One guy sees them and warns our guy it's best not to mess with those guys. But when the blonde guy sees our protagonist, she gets scared and drops her cigarette. Now it's our protagonist and the milkmaids against the group of guys. Everyone is curious about why they're staring at each other, but our protagonist is calm while the poor guy is trembling. The guy with glasses greets him, while the blonde guy is already leaving. But our hero asks if they're coming back tonight. The blonde guy replies that unfortunately, he has to be with his girlfriend again. The girls are confused because they know each other. But the crazy girl realizes that our protagonist is treating the guys like dogs. He gets into the elevator and asks if they're not coming in while he looks and about 10 girls have arrived. And obviously the naughtiest one is in front of him. She wants to play his game, she charms him, and it works even on the reincarnated fool. As they exit the elevator, the scared guy comes up acting like a buddy, putting his hand on the protagonist's shoulder and saying to him, "You're afraid of yourself." Our protagonist removes his hand and says, "I don't know you, so don't touch me." The guy is surprised by this reaction, apologizes, and runs away. "Didn't you say you wanted to be friends with everyone in your speech?" But he enters the room saying he doesn't remember saying that. As he enters, the milkmaid invites them to sit together. The manipulator sits too. As our protagonist passes by, she stares at him and says, "You're right. Quality is better than quantity when it comes to friends." She asks if he wants to make friends. But he responds curtly that friends don't make a difference. Her friend laughs in her face, but after laughing, she stands up and asks for his phone number. Our guy says he'll give it to her, but he doesn't respond much. The psychopath asks, "So is that why you didn't answer my messages? You don't even pay attention to the class representative." Our protagonist makes an excuse, saying he was too busy and will respond later. She gets a little mad, thinking, what's so special about him? He's shameless. He may be handsome, but he's so arrogant. Better keep my distance from him. When she looks away, he's there, focused, making notes. Our protagonist realizes he has a problem. Even though he has a lot of knowledge now, it's hard to remember to use all of it. So his idea was to make these notes like a desperate person to organize his thoughts. The girls stared, thinking he's crazy, and then asked why he's studying so much when they haven't even gotten to that part yet. Our hero asks her if he can't study alone by any chance. She says he can, but wonders, if you were so smart, wouldn't you be in a humanities class? The protagonist says he was just demotivated before, but now he's ready to revolutionize his life. The two girls are impressed, and her friend points out, saying she knew he was some kind of genius, really different from the other guys. But our guy looks suspiciously at her because he knows her very well. In the past life, she used to play with a bunch of guys too, just looking for a rich one. And as soon as she found one, she got married, so he knows why she's doing this. So he asks the president, "Do you think I'm studying so eagerly?" She tries to guess his story, saying he was a troublemaker, but then in the last year, he lost his girlfriend to a rich guy, then he got beaten up, and then he decided to study so it wouldn't happen again. And that's why he avoids all the girls. Huh? Did I get it all right? She asks. Our protagonist laughs. Are you crazy or do you like writing fanfic? She's a bit embarrassed but doesn't respond. Our hero finds it strange that she became so shy. A little later, still timid, she says goodbye, saying she has some things to do. Our guy starts to think that maybe she really writes fanfic, and now he's curious because he doesn't remember that from his past life. But he thinks that even though she deceived him miserably, she was kind. Plus, she was a hardworking and disciplined girl in her own things. He thought she would do well after graduation, but apparently, she got a bad marriage. Still thinking about her being a writer, he remembers something. Once when he was in the computer room, he saw her receiving a message on the PC, someone asking for an update on a novel. And he begins to wonder, does she have two separate personalities? One for writing novels and one here for the university. The scoundrel says he now wants to reveal what she has beneath the disguise. In the next scene, we see her wanting to study, but she's just biting her pen thinking, my God, why can't I forget him? Look at how she looks at our protagonist. She's just worried that he might have noticed something when she hesitated to answer. Sometime later, the milkmaid asks him to wait for them to go to the cafeteria together. But he responds that he has other things to do and she goes off crying to her friend. At night, our boy won't have class tomorrow, so he'll want to buy a new computer and a new cell phone. The only problem is that now he really needs money. When he enters the room, the blonde guy stares at him and gets scared. Our guy throws his backpack on the bed and everyone thinks he's going to grab the hammer. But let's fast forward to the next day. He buys an iPhone, swipes his card to buy a laptop, and then goes and buys a SIM card. The purchase of the SIM card activated the effect of receiving a gift when spending. What he received was a Super SIM card. Automatic and instantaneous registration that cannot be monitored and cannot be tapped. Just by putting in someone's information, you already get their number, it can't be intercepted, and you can call any number without needing credit. Our boy already knows that if he uses this the right way, it will help a lot with his plans. In the room with the round girls, the milkmaid asks the president what she thinks of the protagonist already. In college, there are several rich guys, but his personality is quite unique. The president said she doesn't care about him since he's nothing special. Right at that moment, a message arrives. It's from our protagonist who already used the NASA card to get her number and sent the message, "Hello, monitor, it's Han Lee, but don't give my number to anyone." But then her friend says, "Did you add Han Lee to the college group?" She feels a little sad thinking that today he said not to give it to anyone, but he entered the messaging group. Changing scenes, our protagonist wants to find that forum where she posts her novels, but even after searching for a while, he can't find anything. Maybe that means she hasn't created it yet. Until after researching a lot, he finds her username there, but when he tries to be friends, she has a questionnaire before accepting friendship. Who am I? Who are you and why do you want to add me? Our boy writes what he thinks will convince her and goes back to the room. Again, the thick babe calls him to sit close, while the other girls in the room comment that she doesn't stop flirting. Even our protagonist finds it strange because as friendly as she wasn't that clingy. Looking at the president, he thinks, the bait has been cast, now it's just a matter of waiting for her to take it. Meanwhile, the big-haired guy in the classroom is boasting that his family owns 4 buildings worth millions. But our protagonist knows very well that he's not that rich, and that in reality, his family owns 5 or 6 houses amidst those buildings, and the buildings belong to the entire family. But with so many people involved, the profit isn't that great. You can't say the guy is poor, but he doesn't have as much as he thinks. In the eyes of the president, that guy over there is rich, but he's really dumb. Not very good looking and has no personality whatsoever, while the one who catches her attention the most, she looks at our protagonist and sees him as complete in every aspect. The big-haired guy notices that the protagonist is studying a lot and asks if he plans to pass the exam and why he's studying so much. Our guy says he hasn't decided yet, but he appreciates the concern. A guy points to his own face saying he'll eat half a kilo of crap from the milk girl if our protagonist passes. The guy is taking advantage of the situation to reveal his preference. Han Lee takes advantage of the situation and says, "You say that as if you're sure she's going to feed you." The milk girl feels awkward, tapping his shoulder, but he says he was just joking. She tells him to stop imitating the disgusting behavior of those guys. The pink-haired girl says she found it funny. The big-haired guy gets angry, thinking that when he says it, it's disgusting, but when he says it, it's funny. So he tells our protagonist that if he passes the exam, he'll let him live rent-free in his house for 3 years. Our protagonist just ignores it, thinking he's just seeking attention. Then he replies, "Thanks for the offer. I'll think about it." There's silence in the room and everyone thinks our hero didn't realize he was being humiliated, but in reality, he doesn't care. The president praises him, saying he's very calm and has a good aptitude for learning, and seeing him solve all those math problems, she believes he'll pass. Our protagonist is confused, thinking, is that crazy president praising me? Did something happen? The big-haired guy is kind of skeptical that our guy is really intelligent, so he says, "I doubt he's solving difficult problems," and grabs the notebook from him to see what he's writing. Without understanding anything, he says he wrote things, apparently. But then a smart girl comes and grabs the notebook, looks at it, and says, "The answers are correct, but why isn't there anything written here? No calculations, where's your process?" The protagonist takes the notebook back from her, saying those calculations are too easy, so he solved them mentally. Now he's hit the nail on the head, and they all come happily asking if he could give a private lesson in their room. The big-haired guy gets even more angry, especially when he sees the president talking to our protagonist. He then tries to salvage the rest of his ego, saying maybe with a decade of work, he'll be able to at least buy a little house or make the down payment. If you need a place to rent, just let me know. My family has some houses. The milk girl is really a gold digger and wonders if Hanley really has money. While the psycho president is eager to see Hanley humiliated and defeated. But out of nowhere, the protagonist starts laughing in the big-haired guy's face and says, "What kind of luxurious house does your family have?" The guy says all the houses of his family are incredible and luxurious. But now he's going to be caught in a lie because our guy tells him, "Don't tell me you consider the collective contribution of all the people in your family to that building as your property, do you?" The guy is somewhat embarrassed and says what our protagonist is saying doesn't make sense. And the people in the classroom want to know what's going on. The protagonist says to him, "Building number 4 in Yangpu District, a small building with an elevator and 4 apartments per floor. Over the last 3 generations, your family has managed to buy 8 of them, but you live in 2 and share the profit. I'm not trying to belittle you, but does anyone here know which of the Yangpu properties is considered extremely luxurious in the real estate market?" The protagonist puts on a smug look and says, "I find it a bit strange that you're acting all high and mighty at the expense of 3 generations of your family." Just then, the teacher enters the room and there's silence. The wicked waifu there is looking at the big-haired guy and thinking he's a loser because he didn't respond at all. And she's obviously impressed by how the protagonist reacted to the situation. She's already got her pen in her mouth, thinking she's going to write a novel now about a dominant CEO and use him as a model. But she's having to try to calm down because throughout the entire class, she just wants to keep looking at our reincarnated friend. The end of the class arrives, that friend calls again to go to the cafeteria. But our protagonist says the cafeteria is too expensive. They can't just be spending money there. Just then, he receives a message on his phone and she shouts, "Stop lying, you have a new phone there and can't buy a snack at the cafeteria." He says that's exactly why, since he spent all of his money on the phone and now he's broke. Biting with anger, she tells him to hurry up, she'll pay for everything. Our guy warns that he won't pay her back. She replies that it doesn't matter, and let's just go. Hanley is impressed with how inflated she is. She grabs him by the wrist to take him away and he says, "All right, when it comes to living off others, I'm good at that too." The other girls laughed and she's thinking, living off others? Then she pinches him, asking what he means by that. He replies, "Hey, it's no big deal. I just said that because I usually eat at regular cafeterias." But she's feeling insecure, thinking he believes she's a gold digger. The girl with green hair says, "Relax, I'll pay for your things, it's okay." The protagonist finds it strange, both of them seem very interested in him. But he's more concerned about how he's going to make money. The girl with green hair wants the purest love possible and wants to get married soon, so it's not going to work. And the one on the right wants to marry a rich guy, so that's also not going to work. For him, for now, it's better to just chill. The short-haired one thinks our protagonist is definitely a rich guy to be acting so disinterested around beautiful women. He must have a lot of them around him. And if that's the case, she needs to get him. As long as his family is rich in the end, it's worth it. She's about to say something, but the girl with green hair cuts in again and says, "You bought a bunch of new skincare products. Let me pay for him." She feels a little embarrassed because in reality, she didn't buy anything, it was all a gift from an admirer. So she says she can pay for him, but the girl with green hair says it's okay, but she shouldn't come crying afterward. On the way, they're all interested in him, asking lots of questions. Why did you change your phone? Have you ever been in a relationship? Why haven't you been in one? What kind of woman do you like? What kind of woman do you not like? The other guys are all thinking he's a damn lucky guy. They keep insisting until he responds, "The type of woman I like doesn't need to be exceptionally beautiful, but she needs to be kind and share the same values as me and be a good person to be around." They think it's understandable why he's alone. He's very traditional and demanding. The protagonist asks them, "What quality do you think makes a woman the best?" The milk girl says she has no idea, but in reality, she's thinking, "I'm all inflated and mine are huge." That's what guys like, right? The green-haired girl says what matters is what you like, but she's thinking, "Damn, the president is beautiful and the other one is just inflated. I'll have to find another way to win this." The president isn't liking this joke. She's not even getting involved, but she's being dragged into the comparison. A little while later, everyone's at the cafeteria eating. Hamley shows up with cake for everyone. They're impressed since that's quite expensive. He tells them to enjoy it. While the president is staring at a giant strawberry, he tells her to enjoy it a lot. He got the flavor she likes. After all, he was her simp in the past life. The inflated girl asks why he spent so much money on them. He says it's okay since they also spent a lot on him, practically throwing a banquet for the protagonist. The girls are all around the protagonist, and the two of them are always wanting to talk to him. From afar, the confused president wonders, both of them are beautiful, so why isn't he doing anything? Our guy offers the last tangerine to her, but she says she doesn't want it. Obviously, this rascal is only interested in her and is thinking, "You messed with me so much in the past. How am I going to make you pay for it?" Things are just getting started. Time passed, and our protagonist continued exercising, studying, planning everything, and living his routine. And strangely, in the meantime, he became a celebrity in the dorm, the guy chased by a bunch of thick babes. He sees a message in the college group where people are organizing a trip to the zoo. He knows his popularity lately is only increasing. Then he receives a message from the president saying they're going to the safari park tomorrow. But he doesn't need to worry because she already paid for his trip. This is the first time I'm spending money on a man. Our protagonist, realizing she's upset, thinks, "I'll talk to Little Cucumber," which is actually her pen name on the site where she posts her works. During this time, he's been spending money as her supporter on the site. And for the first time, he receives a message from her saying, "Thank you for the donation. I'm touched." Our guy thinks she finally took the bait, but for now, he needs to confirm that it's her. He takes advantage of this response to ask for her number, if there's any readers group, and if she's planning to release any new work. And depending on the answer he gets to any of these three questions, he'll be sure it's her. And with that, he confirms her identity. The next chapter begins with everyone going to the safari. Our protagonist arrives at the subway station, and the girls are already greeting him. The president arrives looking all cute, saying she'll buy tickets for everyone. And the guys are thinking her legs are amazing. But our guy, on the other hand, thinks those are just stick legs. But he's sneaky, and he already remembers that in his past life, she started going to the gym and got really thick. The rascal is just thinking her body is going to be graceful. A while later, one of the friends grabs his arm, and the other one grabs his arm too. The guy is surrounded. He finds it confusing because in his past life, both of them ignored him. But he doesn't want to get involved in all this silly romance stuff. He crouches down, runs out, saying he needs to go to the bathroom. A while later, they've already arrived at the safari. But our protagonist is alone while the girls are all sending messages asking where he is, but he's not in the mood to respond. Meanwhile, the president is also mad because he ran away without saying anything. And where is he? Until a message from him arrives asking for help. She thinks him asking me for help. I won't respond, but she takes a look and asks what's wrong. He tells her he has a stomachache and no toilet paper. She apologizes, but unfortunately can't go into the men's bathroom. Thinking he finally fell into her hands, but he says, "Ask the janitor, please." She tells him that if he wants a favor, he has to show the right attitude and beg for it. He tells her to hurry up, he's begging. She tells him that if he compliments her properly, she'll help, and she thinks, "If he calls me adorable and wonderful little fairy, I'll help him." But the protagonist calls her mommy, madame, and dear. She already gets angry thinking, "Damn, the heavens sent me this guy here to annoy me. That's why I have no interest in him." Until suddenly, guess who shows up? He was just playing with her heart. This is the ultimate strategy. A love story has to evoke emotions. It can't be a stagnant river. You make the woman frustrated and angry and then give her a mega surprise. This creates a contrast that generates emotional fluctuations. The scoundrel is leveling up that system just to pick up women and even brought ice cream for her. He tells her to hurry up and grab the big ice cream he took a long time to buy, and also that he needs to use the bathroom because he's in a rush. She looks to the side and says, "If you're in a hurry, just go. I don't want you here. You disgusting." The protagonist finds it funny to see her embarrassed. He takes the ice cream and says that if she doesn't eat it, he'll have to force feed her. In some states, this is considered a crime. They chat for a bit, and she's just giggling and giving him some side glances, thinking that she'd be lying if she said she didn't have any positive feelings, and in this case, she might give him a chance. It's at this moment that his system shows. You have acquired the flirting skill level 1. Han Li, not wanting to miss the chance, immediately upgrades it with 180,000 points. He wants to know what effect he'll have with communication, persuasion, and flirting, all at level 3. He playfully messes around with the ice cream, but right then a child passes by and bumps into her. She falls onto our protagonist's belly, feeling embarrassed and moving away, but suddenly she's back sitting next to him. They keep talking until the short-haired friend sees the two sitting on the bench there. She thinks, so that's why he wasn't responding to my messages, because he's with her. But the fanfic writer comes running over and hugs her friend, creating a romantic scene. Our protagonist loves this scene. A little later, they're walking down Snack Street to grab some snacks. The big friend puts on some rabbit ears and asks if she looks cute. Our guy says yes and asks about the other two friends. She says they went for a stroll to buy some stuff. Han Li asks why she didn't go with them. She says she didn't go because otherwise he would be left alone. Then she grabs his arm, calling him to have some fun. They hang out in the park until at one point she sees a necklace. And our protagonist remembers that in his past life he gave her the same necklace, and she hated it. But now she's lying, saying she finds it wonderful. So she suggests they go take a look. She's all interested, but poor guy only remembers that he had to save up for a long time to buy it for her, and he never even saw her wearing it. He may not have any more interest in her, but he finds it strange that she's so in love with this item. He finds it funny and says he'll buy it for her, already telling the receptionist to keep it as a gift from him to his friend. In his mind, this is the last time he'll give a gift as a simp. After this purchase, everything will change. She seems very happy to receive this gift and wants to show it to her friends. But Han Li says it's better not to because it could cause discord. When the protagonist makes the purchase, he receives a pet collar from the system that gives 50 obedience and 50 happiness, and he wonders what to do with it. He thinks it would be good if he were raising a husky, but that's not the case. She then asks him to put it around her neck, and he does. She's very happy, but everyone outside can see it, and the president is feeling isolated. The protagonist thinks, Lu Cheng, right at a time like this, what if she misunderstands? But wait, why am I blaming myself? I have nothing to do with her. And I'm more interested in her online version. I couldn't care less about this offline one. He then approaches her and asks how she's doing. The green-haired one says they were getting ready to leave, but saw that he was busy with something. With that, the park outing ends and he's back home. Han Li is all happy when he talks to the president online but doesn't want to talk to her in person. He really is the king of 2D. On the app, he asks her when she's going to release a new book. She says it will take a little longer. She's been very frustrated lately with her content and isn't happy with the result. The protagonist, with his evolved writing talents, decides to give her some constructive criticism and says she needs to improve especially her amateur style and character development logic. She's impressed that he's actually right. These are my problems. Could you really read everything and be my fan? She thanks him for his words and asks, could you give me more specific feedback on how I can correct this? Now the protagonist feels confident and says, you're lucky that in this life, I'm an expert. He sends a text with a bunch of tips on how to improve her story. Seeing all that, she thinks it will be difficult to correct, but everything he said is completely correct. Our guy already thinks he can now cooperate with her to start the revenge operation. With that, they spend almost the entire night talking with him, giving several tips on how to improve. And to start cooperation with her after talking for a while, he says he has an idea. He always wanted to write a story about a dominant CEO who has a wife with an intense romance. Obviously, he said this because he knows it's exactly the type of story she wants to write. He explains everything and asks if she would like to write this story with him. She ponders and the story advances to the next day, when they meet at the bookstore and she's still mad at him because of the necklace incident. Then she goes to the phone to vent with him, but she doesn't know, obviously. The days go by with him talking all day and all night about the book. A few days later, we see our protagonist eating but more interested in the psychopath's work on his phone, until a new face appears. His bald friend says, that's the beauty of international studies, she's wonderful. His partner says, stick here with us and come meet the guys from my dorm. She looks at the table and the scene changes with everyone talking. His friend introduces her, saying, this is Paige, the most beautiful and popular in the whole university. The protagonist feels embarrassed for her until the guy introduces him. This is Han Li, the king of the girls. Our protagonist interrupts the guy and says he'll introduce himself. Pleasure, I'm Han Li. Paige's friend seems to recognize the name and says, I've heard that name before. Aren't you the guy who's followed around by two beautiful girls every day? They even compete to see who gets to feed you, don't they? Our guy feels exposed and thinks, damn, this fame I'm gaining is ruining me. His friends are even pressed, asking him to teach them how to do it. Meanwhile, Paige tells them to order something to eat soon. The protagonist looks at her while thinking, in my past life, I only saw her a few times from afar. So the guy from my dorm is in the same class as her. If I'm not mistaken, she's extremely rich. It's interesting to see that she's willing to share the table with us commoners. Her personality is very different from the rumors. She says she can't drink much but will try to keep up. Our guy says her eyes are very different. She explains that they come from her mother, who came from afar. Our protagonist says they are uniquely wonderful. They continue this conversation until his friend nudges him and says, look who's over there. It's the president, who already notices the presence of our protagonist. The two recognize each other. The hottest girl in the university's human relations against the hottest girl in the university's finance. It's an intense duel. The president wants to know why the protagonist is sitting here with her. She then asks our guy what was going on there and says she was waiting for a message from him. He replies, I was with my dorm friends until some of their friends showed up, nothing special. But then his friend says, hey waiter, bring another chair for one more person to sit. Our protagonist gives him a stare and the friend thinks, did I do something wrong? Then the president sits down, but he says, we've been eating for a while and there's only leftovers here. Why don't you order something to eat and take it home? In other words, he said, get out of here. The president, who's not naive, understands and gets up, saying, okay, I understand. I'm leaving so I don't bother you guys. But the protagonist doesn't seem to care about her leaving. But our guy, who by this point I'm starting to think is a psychopath, got up and went to the bathroom to talk to her on his secret account. He asks if she's okay, what happened. She said he has no idea and explains, I went to sit with my classmate friend that I mentioned, but he just ignored me and didn't even want me to sit with him. Sometimes he treats me well, and sometimes he treats me badly. The protagonist says he's just playing hot and cold with you and teasing you all the time, don't fall for it. She says it must be that, and that's why she left without looking back. From now on, she won't care about him anymore. Hanley returns to the table and says he's leaving. He throws his wallet on the table and tells his friend, you pay the bill later, and if anything happens, let me know. Meanwhile, the president is in line, texting that she's angry and wants to eat fried rice. At that moment, our protagonist appears with the fried rice already bought and says to her, like in this video, we've come to the end of another one, my dudes. As always, if it goes well on the channel, I'll bring part 2, so activate the notification bell to not miss it. Peace out. The protagonist was bringing fried rice to their friend. He was feeling very confident, saying he would pay for a meal for her. He commented that the fried rice he brought was better than the store's. She didn't react, so he asked what was wrong and if she wanted to switch. He tried the store's rice and found it expensive and bad. The store owner and she wondered what he was talking about. She thanked him for his kindness but declined, saying fried rice would give her pimples if she wasn't in the mood to be around him. She left, making him realize she was angry. Our protagonist questioned why she was angry, wondering if something had happened between her and Panji. He received a message from her on his phone saying the dog tried to deliver rice to her, but she ignored it and left. The protagonist commented that he would give her some credit this time. She said she was going back to the dorm to write because she was tired of being angry with him. Our protagonist then gained 2,000 experience points reflecting on her personality. He concluded that she didn't like anyone invading her space but wanted to invade others' space. He thought about helping her realize and correct this behavior quickly, becoming a psychologist, planning to return to the table with her. A guy saw him with 2 bags of rice and commented about him being hungry, but everyone had already eaten. The protagonist explained that he would take it home and pay the bills. The store owner questioned him about the bags of rice, and another friend defended him, asking them not to meddle in his life. Pangi intervened, saying they were also leaving, and the protagonist said goodbye. Back in the room, the guys invited him to go out. He asked about the place, and the friend with glasses had a contact. They would call some girls from the theater university for karaoke. The protagonist asked if they would sing together and wondered if she was inviting him to pay the bill. The friend warned him to be careful with his words. Our boy explained that he wasn't interested in paying the bill for pretty women and wasn't that interested in them lately. He declined the invitation because he needed to study for a finance competition that would happen in 3 rounds, with the winner taking 1 million. Thinking of taking the opportunity to test the system and make money. The holiday ended and they returned to school, where the girls wanted to stick around him. Feifei asked about the story and he explained it was just a casual meeting. Asking if that was all, he confirmed, and commented that he could have been kinder to her. The 3 girls entered the room. He looked at Tintin and she stared back. Suddenly, the class ends without interpersonal relations. The protagonist looked at Tintin thinking if his behavior was wrong but decided to ignore it. The 3 girls went to eat together after class. She was just thinking that yesterday was weird. But the protagonist is terrible, didn't even talk to her today and still pretended nothing happened. At the table next to some troublemakers. One says their table is lively. and asks if they don't want to join them and that they would even pay. Tintin apologizes but refuses, and complains about the excessiveness of men who start conversations with her. The guy approached her asking her not to be so cold and asked which university they were from. She interrupted and responded from a different one than his and that it wasn't of his interest. One of them, sweating, asked the other to call the protagonist, and desperately she started typing to call him. Another guy went to her and said that since she was typing so much, why not give her number? Tintin stood up and said that was harassment, and that if they kept bothering them, she would call the police. Mockingly, the guy said she was quite fierce, and asked if that was considered harassment, because they just wanted to pay for lunch and asked for a chance. While grabbing Tintin's wrist, he asked her not to be so shy. The protagonist arrived and asked what was happening. Tintin, seeing him, was happy, saying he finally arrived. The delinquent asked if our boy was with them, calling him lucky for being with such dense girls. The guy then asked which one was the protagonist's, asking him to introduce him to the others while squeezing Tintin's arm. Our boy approached and grabbed his arm, asking where he thought his hand was. The delinquent, suffering, asked him to let go, calling him a lunatic. The protagonist asked if he thought that was crazy, while asking what other people would think of him harassing girls. The delinquent didn't like it and asked if he couldn't want to get to know more people, already heading towards the protagonist with a punch. But our boy has the hacks. Giving a slap on the hand and another on the foot, he finishes with the guy immediately going to the ground. The protagonist looks around and says that he started it. The delinquent's friends and everyone in the store look at him. Our boy asks what the girls are doing and tells them to leave, because they don't want to eat in a place where everyone is staring at them. The gold digger babe loved that the protagonist taught the guy a lesson, while he's asking Tintin if she's okay. Our boy says he is happy anyway and turns around. He looks back and asks her what she thought of that move. She is confused, not knowing what he is talking about. He says he knows she reads those novels where the guy shows up and saves the princess, saying he is the prince of this story. She says that has nothing to do with it and it doesn't make sense. But she was caught off guard and wonders how the protagonist knew what she was thinking. Some time passes and the girl is all excited that her novel was approved. The only strange thing she found was that the guy asked to change the main character's name to Han Lee. In a finance class, the protagonist was using the notebook. The professor, seeing this, said that if he is the smart one, he should show it, since he didn't want to pay attention. Our boy went up front and gave a class showing he is a genius, and the babes were fascinated as always. The professor was impressed, and this information reached Pangy's ears. She thought the protagonist was an interesting guy. In the next class, the girls came to ask our boy questions. Seeing that bunch of girls, the president got jealous and went to ask some questions too. However, the protagonist interrupted her, saying he would answer first the others who asked. Obviously, she didn't like that, and went to complain to him, but on the phone. In the messages, she says she hates that guy, because she lowered her status to go talk to him, who showed no reaction. The protagonist on the secret account asked if they still hadn't made up and what was going on. She says it's strange since it was just for 2 roommates who were hanging around him. Now all the girls in the class are around him and that irritates her. The protagonist on the secret account starts attacking her, asking her why she is so angry, and if it's because there are many girls around or because she likes him. She replied she doesn't like him and is just curious how he manages to do all that even though they are the same age. The protagonist from the web tells her that if that's the case, she should show she's even better. He tells her to publish this book and be successful and show him the results. She already imagines herself with all the success and the protagonist humbling himself for an autograph. A week later, it is making a little success, but our boy throws a bucket of cold water, thinking that he has to prepare for the competition worth $1 million so he won't be able to write all day. He then tells her that she will have to write some things that were his, but she gets a higher percentage for it. She says that's okay, the only problem is that there are some scenes she doesn't know how to do, because she has never been in that situation, like the scene where she is dominated. But the protagonist, on the other hand, is also inexperienced when it comes to that, and wonders if he can use the internet, but then has an idea. He remembers he got the dog collar. The next day starts with Tintin going to pick up a package. The protagonist asks what she is going to get and offers help. She brutally rejects and says she will get it herself. The box is a package that arrived from the protagonist, but it is him only as his writer version from the internet, so she doesn't know it's from him, but she is all happy looking at the box. Our boy arrives asking what's in it and why she is so happy looking at it. She says it's none of his business, but the rascal is thinking that it is. After all, he made all this effort to give this gift. That's when the short-haired babe Union finds the two together once again. She is angry because as far as she knows, Tintin was supposed to be giving the protagonist a hard time. So she already comes for the sure attack and throws his arm for an adventure, asking what they are going to eat together today. Our boy takes his arm off and says that today he is going to eat with Tintin, so she will decide. The poor girl is confused, wondering what is going on and if they are together again. In the cafeteria, she wants to give all the food to the protagonist to turn him into food. But she is thinking that if President Tintin enters the competition, it is the end of her and the other girls' chances. When they were eating, Yun raised her hand and greeted someone. The president looks back and sees Panji approaching. She sat next to him but didn't show any interest in talking. The Evian said the atmosphere was weird and asked the protagonist what was happening. He ignored her and went to relax a bit with Pangi, talking about waking up early to enjoy the empty cafeteria. Tintin didn't like this relaxation at all, wondering why they were talking so calmly. To try to end the conversation, she gave him a tangerine and told him to eat it. Pangi, seeing Tintin offering the tangerine, thought that she liked Han Li, or maybe she was trying to get back at him for the last time. Pangi's friend gave a jewel to the protagonist, saying that he was incredible for always getting the girl's attention. He said that those without shame are truly invincible, and asked Pangi's friend if she also wanted to support him financially. Embarrassed, she said that wouldn't work because she didn't have the money for it. But if he asked Pangi, she could support him because she had a lot of money. The protagonist said that a meal in the cafeteria wasn't her style. Yunyun didn't like this conversation, thinking that she was already competing with the president and now Pangi was entering the fray. She felt she was losing all of her chances, so she needed to change the subject. She then asked Tintin what she had bought, already looking at the box. Tintin responded that she hadn't bought it and a friend had sent it to her. Yunyun asked if it was that friend she talked to all day on the internet. Tintin, angry, grabbed the box from her hand, telling her not to meddle in her life. Pangi's friend said she understood, and that since Tintin was very beautiful, she must receive many gifts from various admirers. Tintin said she didn't accept anything from admirers and that it was just a jewel from a friend. Already handing the gift to Yunyun to open, she was thinking that whoever sent it probably didn't send anything strange. It was probably a jewel or something like that, and if she kept hiding things, it would become more peculiar. Yunyun took and opened the box, and praised the packaging of the gift. Tintin got worried, wondering if he hadn't sent anything strange, and that it should be an earring or a necklace. Tintin dropped the gift on the floor and asked her what it was. To no one's surprise, it was the protagonist's collar. Tintin was wondering how she was going to explain this, because if it was just the necklace, it would be fine. But it came with a collar. The two, seeing that the gift was a collar, kept tossing it back and forth. The girls nearby were wondering why she had received a dog collar. Pangi began to imagine something. She hadn't imagined that these best friends were so close. Pangi's friend said the gift was amazing, so they must have a lot of fun. Poor Tintin tried to explain, but she couldn't, complicating things even more with each word. So she asked Yunyun for help, but Yunyun said she respected her preferences, but she liked men. Tintin didn't understand why Yunyun had said that and was confused. Pangi approached and said that as long as it didn't hurt anyone, people's preferences should be respected, and that she genuinely appreciated it from the bottom of her heart, telling her to continue being herself. The protagonist started laughing in her face. Impressed by unique preferences of the class president, she slapped him and thought everything was ruined now. Because of all the pressure and anguish, she couldn't take it and started crying at the table. Yunyun, feeling awkward, asked why she was crying in front of everyone. On the other hand, she thought that with Pangi out and her other competitor having a special hobby exposed, she had an advantage. She looked at the protagonist and asked if he could talk to Tintin, but she didn't understand the protagonist's look, who was judging the girl. But he came over and said everything would be fine and told her to stop crying, even buying her an ice cream. He told Yunyun to keep an eye on her while he went to get the ice cream. She found it peculiar, because Han Li always ignored Tintin's drama, but now he wanted to please her just because she was crying. But then she realized, since the protagonist never said he didn't like her, he only said he didn't like her personality, and that his so-called disinterest was just a provocation. She realized the protagonist was playing on the girl's weak point, but she wouldn't accept that. When our boy bought the ice cream for Tintin, he activated the system that gave extra rewards, gaining a candy that increased the person's obedience to him and made them accept some requests. The protagonist thought this gift arrived at the perfect time. Returning, he told Yunyun to go back to class, because he would take care of her since she wasn't feeling well. Yunyun just left, saying she would hold the seats and wait for them. From the table, Tintin said she didn't need them and told them to leave. He told her not to act like it's Sundeer and take the ice cream he bought. She said she was tired of his game of provoking and then giving ice cream. The protagonist said that if she took a bite, he would teach her how to get out of this mess. She looked at him with a pleading expression for help. Our boy said it was fine and he would give her some ideas. She said she was fine and would believe him this time. He just stared at her, thinking how the game had turned compared to the past life. After a while, she finished the ice cream and asked what to do. Our boy said the solution was easy. She just needed to confess in public. She was incredulous with the response. Han Li said it was simple, and asked why she cared that people knew about her hobby, that she should just tell everyone already. She then gave him a vampiric bite on his arm. Angry, she said she knew she couldn't trust him. The protagonist said he was kidding, and that she should just be cold to those who laughed at her, telling her to humiliate anyone who laughed. She asked if he was telling her to be a domineering queen. Our boy said she didn't mean to pretend, but just be herself a little more. She said she was leaving because he was just annoying and not helping at all. The protagonist said she had a queen's personality, but he was afraid she might pull out a whip and hit him. She tried to explain, but changed her mind and said nothing. He suddenly became a psychologist, saying he understood that she must have her reasons, but she had to do what she wanted, and what others thought didn't matter. because she couldn't give up her dreams due to public opinion. Hearing this, Tintin was happy. But the sly protagonist, while saying these things, took out the system candy, asking if she felt better and offering the candy. She quickly grabbed it from his hand and put it in her mouth, saying she would take it from him because she knew he was a glutton. Otherwise, he would ask for it back. The protagonist thought she fell for it so easily. Approaching, he reminded her that she wanted to experience those things, where he offered to help. She was embarrassed, remembering the novel, thinking that she needed to experience it to write the story correctly. But she snapped back to reality and pushed him away, asking if he was trying to deceive her again. She said she had class and left. The protagonist was surprised, but he knew it wouldn't be that easy, and that if it were that easy, he wouldn't have suffered so much in the previous life. The system candy had its powers, but it wasn't impossible to refuse. Back in his room, he was studying to win the competition. Suddenly, his friends entered. The one in the classes asked if he had heard that the class president was a lesbian. He was speechless, but asked where that rumor came from. The guy said that today during the break, she went to Pangy's class and confessed. The protagonist was shocked and asked him to explain properly. His friend said the scene was unbelievable. As soon as the class ended, Tintin walked through the door, and although she had a smile on her face, she had an indomitable aura. She immediately went to Pangy, who didn't know what was happening. In the blink of an eye, she grabbed Pangy's hand, pulled her by the arm, and confessed her supposed love. But Pangy pushed her away, but she didn't get sad. She had a mischievous smile. After that, she even squeezed Pangy's butt and said she would use that gift with her. The guy with glasses said the protagonist should have been there to see it. The bald friend asked what our boy thought that gift was, that even Pangy blushed when she heard it. Hanley feigned ignorance and said he didn't know, but he understood Tintin's plan. She wanted to involve Pangy in this mess so they could both sink together. Back in class, the green-haired babe Fifi came to tell him everything. Hanley said he already knew everything, but Fifi said she wished she had seen the scene with the two of them and that it would have been wonderful. Hanley said it really would have been. Suddenly, Fifi said that was how she wanted the scene and placed the protagonist's hand on her face. He was confused and wondered what kind of demonstration this was, and didn't understand why she was looking at him like that, finding it strange since this girl wasn't so shy and uncomfortable when she looked at him. Our boy, with his hand on his forehead, is at a loss about how to deal with everything that's happening. Then he remembers he has the secondary account. He quickly goes to chat with her on the computer. She obviously curses him because of the gift, asking what he was thinking by sending that collar and explaining that it caused a mess in the cafeteria. She explained that Union pulled that collar out in front of everyone to show it was hers, and that clearly Union wanted to harm her and ruin her chances with her man god. The protagonist is confused, wondering since when he is her man god. But this is just the effect of the system candy he gave her. Our boy, knowing Union from the past life, knows that she indeed showed the collar to everyone on purpose. Sometime later, the protagonist is returning to the classroom. Union calls him, but the president tells him to come to her because she has something to say. He asks what's going on, but she is happy because at least he didn't go to stick with Union. The president tells the protagonist that everyone is talking badly about her because of that thing, and maybe they will even try to take her position. It's probably that guy Liu Hong. The protagonist thinks of a wicked plan, telling her to buy 2 Marlboro Black and place them under the guy's desk. That way he has no chance of becoming president. She is surprised by his diabolical plan. Our protagonist says that if she doesn't trust him, she should come up with a better plan. The girl says she will follow the plan, especially since she is under the effect of the system candy. The protagonist teases her, saying she always asks him for advice, but she says she has helped him a lot too, so they are on equal footing. Our boy tells her to do whatever she wants, but not to ask him for more advice if things go wrong. She is caught by surprise and tells him that she doesn't get along with Pangy, and if Tintin doesn't show who's boss, she will never be able to handle her. The protagonist says he doesn't understand how girls' fights work. However, he wishes her good luck, because if she can't handle Pangy, she should find someone else, and he emphasizes that there's no reason to care so much. After that, even his instigation skill level increased, and the system congratulates him for gaining a bunch of useless skills. Sometime later at home, the instigation skills suddenly leveled up to 2. He is confused about why the level suddenly increased, and wonders who he instigated. In the chat, E and the girl are happily talking because the book is selling well. She talks about the protagonist in the classroom, and his internet version says she is always commenting about him. So why doesn't she make a move on him? Instigation gains more experience. She hesitates and says she would never chase someone, especially if it's Han Lee. She says our boy is isolated studying, not to mention everyone thinks she's a lesbian now. So how can she chase someone like that? The internet protagonist says that's just for pretending, and if he's busy during the week, invite him out on the weekend. If you stall too long, he will really think you like women, and then you will lose him. Thanks to the system candy, instigation is working very well. She starts to think that if other people believe that, she wouldn't care. But if he starts to believe it, it will ruin everything. She sends a message saying it makes sense, and that she will try and see what happens. Sometime later, our boy is all tired running on the track when she arrives, greeting him good morning. Hanley asks how she is. At the same time, he says she's all dressed up and asks if she's going out with Pangy. She responds it has nothing to do with Pangi, asking if he finished the run, and that there's a new game room and if he wants to go with her. Though it was the protagonist himself who told her to ask him out, now he pretends to show no interest. Hanley, feigning disinterest, tells her to call Fifi to go with her. She says embarrassed that Fifi is too scared so it won't work with her. Calling him once more, she says there are some things she didn't explain well and wants to talk to him along the way. He agrees to go but says he will charge for his time. Tintin responds asking if the price of the game room and lunch isn't good enough for him. The protagonist says it's almost enough, but he tells her to wait there while he goes to change his clothes. A little while later, our boy is back. Walking through the city, he suddenly calls out to her, saying he wants to explain a few things, and that he doesn't understand the reason for all this. Tintin is desperate because she doesn't know how to act in this situation. For a moment, she thinks about confessing, but she says she doesn't like him that much. Our boy says he knows, and he says she must have a problem with her relationship with Pangi, so he tells her not to worry. Just talk to him, and he'll give her some tips. She goes towards him to hit him, but he asks her to calm down because there's no need for violence. Then they arrive at the place Tintin wanted to go, an escape room. The internet protagonist had given her the tip, telling her to take him to an escape room, and when something happens, pretend to be scared and jump on him, because the rest will happen on its own. But the girl genuinely seems scared. Hamley touches her back, turning around and getting startled. He apologizes for that, but says he's curious, not knowing what she wanted to ask. She tells him to shut up, asking if he doesn't know where they are, and that it's not the time to talk about that. At that moment, the flashlight's battery dies. A chainsaw zombie appears behind them. Outside in the cafeteria, she is trembling, saying it was very scary. Our boy says she talked about Fifi, but she suffered more than her. She says embarrassed that she didn't expect they had planned for the battery to die. He asks once again what she wanted to talk about, and she's a bit ashamed. He notices a lot of people watching and says he understands everything now. Since everyone thinks she's a lesbian, she wanted him to go with her to pretend she's interested in him, to use him as a shield. Already getting up, he apologizes, but he's focused on his competition, telling her to continue with her games. Tintin was confused, saying she really has a problem, but it wasn't to use him as a shield. She understands that anyone who gets close to her or Pangi will get involved in this whole mess, but Hanley didn't even let her explain anything. However, she gets irritated and says she will resolve this with the person. She called Pangi asking what she was doing, mocking that she missed her since it had been a long time since they saw each other and that she was hungry. Pangi is angry that she caused all that confusion, and now Tintin wants to bully her for being alone. Pangi gives a malicious smile and sends a friend request to the protagonist. He doesn't understand at first, but soon thinks that probably the president contacted her, and apparently she wants to involve him in all this to annoy Tintin. Pangi says she got his contact from a friend, and says she has a reservation at a Japanese restaurant, but her friend can't go and invites him to go with her, saying he was the first person who came to her mind. The protagonist says that's fine, he has some free time for her. The girl thinks she's only seen him twice, but it's clear that the president likes him. If she messes with Hanley, it won't be a problem to deal with that lunatic president. However, he apologizes and says today won't work, because he already went to the escape game with a friend today and he will be busy until the evening, so this meeting won't happen. Hearing this, she's incredulous that he rejected her, because usually people cancel everything to talk to her. She responds that's fine and they can arrange for another day. But the girl realizes when she remembers that he said he went to an escape room with another girl. Assuming it was the president, she thinks she must be using him as a shield. But why? To divert people's attention? Saying he must know very well why he added her. Meanwhile, the president is calling her to go out. She responds that she's lazy and doesn't want to go, but thinks that this president really liked the escape room, because she said she would call Pangi to go there too. With a malicious face, she plans something. Back in his room, the protagonist receives payment from the publisher and invests the points in writing experience. He was all engrossed thinking about the book, when Pangi sends a message asking about him. Suddenly, we're teleported to the restaurant, and apparently the girl convinced the boy, and even asked if they were going to get drunk today. She says they have to make the most of this time, because it's not every day that our boy is available. She had to keep asking from October until the beginning of November just to get him to show up. Our boy feels a bit embarrassed, saying he was very busy. In reality, he didn't want to get involved because he had already refused twice, so refusing a third time would make her not want to be friends with him anymore. Pangi asks if it's because of that competition he's preparing for. He replies that it's exactly that and that things have been very hectic. She asks him to let it go so it doesn't spoil the mood, asking him what he thinks of the restaurant. Something that looks like dirty water arrives, but in theory, it's an alcoholic drink. The protagonist says that with her presence, this place is radiant. She says she understands why the girls keep surrounding him, because he always talks in an interesting way. Our boy feels embarrassed, thinking that this girl is on a higher level compared to the others, and that he can't play games with her. The topics, the tone of voice, the expressions she makes. Not even with his level 3 psychology skill is it enough. Our boy got lucky that the waiter arrived just in time with the crabs all tied up. He notices that the food is very well prepared. However, when our boy is about to eat, she tells him to wait so she can take a photo. For a moment, he thought it didn't make sense for her to take a photo since she's so rich and it's common for her. Understanding the situation, he supposes there's another intention behind this photo. Pangi posts the photo and he says he doesn't use social media much, wondering if she tagged him in the post. In the description, it's written that she is at the Onball restaurant with a classmate. In the photo, it's not just the food. It's him and 4KHER. He knew it was called here to mess with the poor president's life, but he fell right into the trap. She picks up a little ball with chopsticks and tells him to wait. Right at that moment, a voice appears calling her little Nana and asking if she's here dining with friends. Supposedly, the voice is her father's, and along with him is her uncle and a security guard. The old man says that his friends were there because they wanted to drink dirty water and eat a tied-up crab. Pangi says that her mother will be mad if she finds out he's going out to drink. He changes the subject and asks her to introduce him to her classmate. Our boy raises his hand, greeting Pangi's father. He introduces himself as Han Lee from the university. Her father approaches, asking if the protagonist is a friend from school, because it's the first time he's seen Pangi going out to eat with a man. Hearing this, our boy feels embarrassed. The old man suddenly tells the protagonist that he supports him 100% in becoming friends with her, and that if their personalities match, the two can advance the relationship. Hearing this, Pangi pushes him away, telling him to leave. With a smile on his face, her father waves goodbye to the protagonist, who reciprocates the gesture. He asks if they will continue eating. She sits down, responding, "What else would we do?" Our boy is wondering why her father was so excited. Changing the subject, Hanley asks what her father does for work. Pangi didn't like that he called him dad, but the protagonist responds that he was joking. She says that if he goes up there and calls the old man dad, she will tell Hanley whatever he wants. He accepts the challenge. Desperate, she asks if our boy has no manners. Pangi says she will explain so he doesn't do something crazy. Her father is on the school board, but he doesn't do anything related to the school. They talk a bit, and the protagonist asks why she is doing the international relations course. Pangi says she didn't want to, but her family wouldn't let her stay in another because they want her close, and explains to the protagonist that it seems her family has an important business, but they don't trust her with it because they think she's stupid. So the family just wants her to stay in college for a while, find someone, and get married so as not to mess up the family business. But the protagonist, knowing her personality, knows that's not what she wants. At that moment, someone arrives, asking if Pangi doesn't love her anymore for not inviting her to eat. It was the president, who immediately clung to Pangi. The protagonist knows it's all an act. He's sure Tintin saw the post on social media and came running. Pangi doesn't seem to be enjoying it, but at the right moment, someone appears saying that Pangi's father is calling him for a talk. Hearing this, the two girls are left wondering what he wants with our boy. As he climbs up, the protagonist thinks the man is going to talk to him about his daughter getting involved with women. However, he says he doesn't know where the conversation will go. At the door before entering, he hears Pangi's father saying he thinks his daughter is smart, but passing the whole company to her will be difficult. But if she could find a responsible husband, maybe together they could take over the company. Our boy freezes, wondering if the father is planning to pass the whole company to the son-in-law. Maliciously, he says it's a very rare opportunity, and it would be foolish not to take advantage of it. Sometime later, our boy appears opening the door, calling Mr. Pan uncle. Seeing the alcohol in the protagonist's hand, the uncle is surprised. Hanley says he didn't want to show up empty-handed and also wanted to thank him for his hospitality. The protagonist says he will serve, since he knows etiquette very well because his family was strict when he was young. The protagonist served wine perfectly, from the height and to the people in the right order. The man thinks the boy has incredible etiquette. He must have a very special family behind him. The father asks if the protagonist is from here because of his accent. He says no, he's from Dream City, but he just arrived in the capital and decided to live on campus to adjust. The uncle reveals he didn't call him for anything specific, but just that Pangi doesn't go out much with boys, and if he could spend more time with her, take her to the mall to chat, it would be good. Telling him not to worry as he will pay for everything. Hanley thanks him, understanding clearly that the father is trying to set someone up to take care of the company. Our boy says he uses all of his free time to study, so he doesn't have much available to go out with her. Telling the father not to worry as Pangi loves going out with the girls, so much so that one just arrived to chat with her. Mr. Pan is surprised and says he understands why Pangi didn't come upstairs, but he knows many of her friends and asks who the girl is. Our protagonist responds that it's the class president Tintin. Her father tells him to go back down and eat with Pangi, as he will pay for everything they order. The protagonist says goodbye, and the poor man gets desperate, saying he has to go see for himself. The uncles ask him to calm down, as if he goes down, he will end up scaring the kids. Downstairs, the president was clinging to Pangi. She asks what her father wanted with him. Our boy says it was nothing much. He just asked him to take care of his precious daughter. The crazy president says the protagonist doesn't need to take care of her. She will take care of her. She wants to know why he came to meet Pangi, asking if he didn't know about the relationship. Hanley asks what she is talking about, because he came to eat for free, but he wants to know why Tintin showed up there. She says she felt like eating good crab, and that this is the only place. The protagonist knows it's not true. She just came there to keep an eye on him. Pangi is tired of this situation. She says Tintin should stop with this, as she didn't invite her, so she will have to pay for her food. Tintin says she will pay anyway as she just received her allowance. The protagonist sees Panji's father coming down the stairs, trembling. At this moment, the president is talking and asks them to finish the crab quickly so he doesn't meet the two. The protagonist tries, somehow, to interrupt the situation. He's already thinking it's good that Panji's father doesn't have high blood pressure, as he's all sweaty. Our boy reflects that their relationship at the table is very loving. Panji questions why he is winking at her, not knowing the meaning of it. The father calms down and observes that they seem to be flirting. He questions what this talk is about, killing two birds with one stone, and if this is how young people nowadays solve their love problems. Tintin, provoking, thinks she's joking with Panji. She asks what the need is for a man, and if she isn't enough. She mentions her skills with those toys and claims they can handle it, highlighting her own skill. The father doesn't understand what this means. He wonders what's happening and even faints. An uncle had to hold him, clenching his fist and calming down, because they still have that young boy. If he can fix this negotiation, he can ask for whatever he wants. Panji tells the president to ask Fifi to do those things with her, as she knows she will like it. Despite this, she bets that Fifi would want to marry Hanley if he asked. The father misunderstood the situation. He thinks Panji called the protagonist to break up the relationship between him and the president, deciding that he will have to get involved. He approaches and asks how the food is. Panji responds by asking why he came there, mentioning he heard that a new friend of hers also came. He says he came to meet everyone, including Tintin. She greets Uncle Pan. The protagonist understands that the girls have no idea why Mr. Pan is there. Pointing to Hanley, the father explains that Panji is a bit reserved and doesn't have many friends she gets along with. He says the protagonist and Tintin are great kids, and invites them to visit their home in the future if they have a free weekend, promising to welcome them with great pleasure. Panji starts to feel that something is off. Her father has always been strict with any boy. She questions why he's being so inviting to Hanley and if there is something special about him. Seeing him smiling foolishly bothers Panji. She wonders why the protagonist is smiling and what her father sees in him. Panji doesn't notice anything extraordinary and decides she will find out what is so special about him. Back at home, the protagonist's friends are all in the room. He comments that he's surprised to see them there and not out. One of them explains that he was waiting for him to say something. Supposedly, a guy named Dan Zahal, one of the three richest at the university and Panji's #1 admirer, suddenly showed up and asked for information about him. The protagonist thanks for the information and his friends leave. Back at the computer, he transfers money to Tintin, who is surprised by the amount. He explains that the novel is doing well. The president asks if they will keep earning that much money next month. She says she wants to make a lot of money, and he asks why. Tintin reveals that a rich woman is interested in the man she loves and spent over 3,000 on crabs with him. The protagonist asks if she's afraid the woman will use money to win him over, and she confirms. Since it would be impossible in finance, he advises her to use her beauty to compete. The next day, everyone at the university is impressed by the president's transformation. Our boy compliments her, saying she seems to be in a great mood and asks if she got what she wanted with Panji the day before. Tintin responds irritably, saying she's not dressing up for the protagonist, so he should stop looking at her. He laughs and comments on her new elegant style. At that moment, the professor enters the room and announces a big competition for which the protagonist has been preparing. In the preliminaries, they will have test accounts to manage investment funds and buy stocks. Those who advance to the main stages will manage 300,000 and the finalists will have an account with 1 million, keeping the profits. The girls now want the protagonist's help, knowing he's been studying for this for a long time. Who doesn't like this situation is the long-haired guy watching from afar, irritated. The protagonist remembers that in his past life, it was around this time that Fifi started getting close to the long-haired guy who finished in the top 20% of the competition. But this time, he promises it will be different. The president challenges the protagonist, wanting to see if all the time he invested in studying was worth it. He proposes a bet to see who profits more from the investments. Tintin thinks it's foolish as the professor always praises him and he's been studying for a long time. The class suggests she get a 20% advantage. She agrees to the advantage and accepts the bet, feeling she can't be humiliated in front of everyone. Confident, the protagonist accepts the bet. He believes that based on his past life, he could give an 80% advantage and still win. Yeon asks what's at stake in the bet. The president, with the advantage, lets him choose what will be bet. Hanley says if she wins, she can ask for anything, he will comply as long as it's within his capabilities. However, if he wins, she will have to forgive him unconditionally once in the future, no matter what happens. Tintin asks what he's planning to do. Our boy says it's nothing big, just something simple, like he went to a date with an attractive girl. The class is confused, asking what the logic is and if they have some relationship. Tintin is intrigued and asks what he's talking about, saying who he dates is her problem. The protagonist says that's fine and asks what she wants to bet. She responds that if he loses, he's prohibited from dating anyone for the 4 years he's at school. The protagonist accepts but thinks she's digging her own grave with this bet. Yeon comments that it's an exaggeration, asking how he will survive 4 years like that. The classmates think it's not a bad idea since with him out of the game, things will improve. Tintin's plan is simple. She hasn't decided yet, so she will keep him locked. The promise is made in front of everyone, and after that, Yun Yun invites the protagonist to eat. On the way, she asks if after eating he can take a walk in the park with her. The protagonist refuses, saying he's not in the mood. Yun Yun tries to be cute, saying she understands what's happening since he's worried about the competition. She's sad, but says she will always wait for him. The protagonist calls her dishonest, saying if he didn't know her from the past life, he would have fallen for that trick. He thinks all of her love is because she believes he's from a rich family, and if she discovered he's poor, everything would change in an instant. He ignores her and walks away. Yun Yun comments that this attitude shows he had his heart broken. She believes he must be afraid of someone hurting him again and clings to his arm, determined to warm his heart. The protagonist finds it peculiar as even after reprimanding her, she seems more excited. Time passes, days go by, and finally the day of the competition arrives. The professor sits in the room and the protagonist opens the laptop. Everyone is ready to start investing. The president seems to be doing well, which impresses the protagonist. Everyone wants to know what he will buy. He takes a photo and shows that he bought a single stock. The protagonist put all his virtual investment into just one stock, which confuses everyone since he always taught not to do that. They insist he explain, and he sends a huge text because that's what he thinks will work. The next day, the protagonist arrives, hinting at Tintin by asking how her investment went. She replies that he only won one battle in this war and there are still many to come. He invites her to eat something and relax, but she says she can't because she needs to monitor the investments. The protagonist thinks he wanted to eat when Panji from afar calls him enthusiastically, and he knows something is coming. A friend asks what the protagonist wants, and he replies that anything will do. A guy snickers, identifying him as Han Lee. He realizes that Panji is trying to cause problems for him. The guy comments that the protagonist is poor and has nothing special. Panji says that's rude, but the guy insists he's just telling the truth. The protagonist remembers that she always had many admirers in the past life and wonders why she brought someone to use as a shield to trouble him. He concludes that the guy must be Dan Ziha. The guy tells Panji that interacting with someone like the protagonist will lower her social status, and also that he made her wait a long time. Panji pretends not to understand, agreeing that he took a long time to accept the invitation to eat lobster, but defending that he's working hard. Panji thinks that since she can't compete against the president, she will cause problems for the protagonist, remembering that he joked with her and even ate for free. She also doesn't understand why her father keeps telling her to talk to him. The protagonist pats her head while apologizing, which embarrasses her. He says not to wait for him next time and to listen to him. Panji is confused by his audacity, but she can't scold him because she was the one who invited him. She thinks that if she doesn't do anything, she will become a joke and he will try to use this to his advantage in the future. She decides to use her most powerful card, the silent accusatory stare technique, believing that by staring at the protagonist for 10 seconds, he will apologize. However, the protagonist thinks she is ridiculous, not understanding why it's not working. Panji wonders why the technique that always worked since childhood is not having any effect now. On the other side of the table, the jealous guy got angry. He was irritated with the protagonist for putting his hand on Panji. The guy thought that she hated being touched and wondered what kind of relationship they had. Panji adjusted her hair and commented that he shouldn't touch her head like that as it messed up her hairstyle. Zhao thought that messing up her hairstyle should be a reason for a much bigger scolding. He then greeted the protagonist, who stared back and suggested they should go out for a drink one of these days. Zihao, a bit surprised, agreed that they could. In the next chapter, Panji was back home reflecting on how being born into a rich family made many people envy her. She thought that having so much power sometimes created strange situations where people always asked for her help. She remembered what her father always said, that smart people stay away from those with a significant financial difference, because the richest don't need her for anything and the poorest just want her help. She punched the pillow, irritated with the protagonist, thinking that the first time they talked was smooth, but now he liked to embarrass her. At that moment, her friend ran into the room saying she needed to see something. The class competition ranking had come out that day. The student council compared all the top students and made a list. The friend asked if Panji believed Han Lee was on the list. Panji asked if being in 9th place was good. The friend said he wasn't just good, but probably an expert. Panji's expression changed, becoming intrigued, asking if he was really that incredible. The friend confirmed and asked why. Panji replied it was nothing much, but if he was that incredible, he would help her. Meanwhile, the long-haired guy was feeling smug. He had a good day of investments the day before, and everyone was praising him. Fife again announced that everyone should look at the forum because the national general ranking was being updated. The tired protagonist entered the room but noticed everyone was staring at him. An announcement was made for the entire school, informing that Han Lee from the finance department was ranked 7th in the nation. All the teachers and staff congratulated him. Feeling uncomfortable, he said he had forgotten that the rankings updated like that, but it was only the 3rd day, so it wasn't time for congratulations yet. The class surrounded him, and Union commented that the president would lose the bet. The protagonist said he thought not because he had looked at the stock the president bought and knew it would rise again. However, she arrived and revealed that she had sold it in the morning. Hearing this, the protagonist was surprised and asked what she was talking about. She revealed that she sold her stocks before yesterday and bought the same ones he did. She couldn't make as much as he did, but she got great profit. The protagonist thought she was cunning, realizing she just copied his stocks. Later, he was walking when the president approached, clinging to him. Our boy asked what she wanted and if she was trying to copy everything for him again. She replied that now that he set the standard for the class, an imitation wouldn't hurt. They saw a poster with the same message as the announcement but written. A student, curious, asked who this Hanley was and complained that the school was exaggerating by valuing such an insignificant prize. The president was furious, ready to fight everyone. Some students recognized the president and thought she had changed her taste. She clenched her fist, ready to punch, but the students ran away, thinking she was crazy. The protagonist patted her head, telling her not to worry when people talked badly about him because he didn't care about those things. The president was angry, telling him to get his hand off her head. At that moment, it became clear that it was Pangi using her father's influence to make the school announce and put up the posters. She had a plan. With this, all the other departments would keep an eye on him. Now, two things could happen. Either he would do well until the end and gain fame, or he would make a mistake and lose his reputation. The protagonist's friends entered the room and offered him something to eat, which he immediately refused. They were talking, and one of them commented that the school publishing this about Hanley so early would cause envy in everyone. The friend with glasses said that wasn't even the biggest problem because with the results not yet finalized and all this hype, the pressure on him would increase a lot. The protagonist was surprised by his friend's perception, thinking that if he did poorly, he would be embarrassed. But he was confident he would make a mistake. Watching the stock market opening time, he thought it was about to start and that he would win perfectly. Sometime later, the protagonist went to the teacher's room with the president and received an award. When they returned to the classroom, everyone applauds the two of them. With the tips our boy gave, Tintin ended up just 1.2% behind him. Sweating, she suggests canceling the bet for now. Sitting in his chair, the protagonist questions why she wants to cancel the bet. Tintin responds that she realized she was being overly confident and that they are on completely different levels. She thinks that with her current skills, the bet is a public execution. Back in his room, the protagonist notices that everyone in the chat is asking him for tips, wanting to know what he is doing. Suddenly, the professor bursts into the room with the finance department directors. The protagonist is surprised by the number of people in the room, and the professor praises the glory he has brought to the school, sincerely thanking him. The president of the student union and Minister Fai are also present, praising our boy. Everyone wants to interview him, but first the protagonist wants to ask for something, showing some difficulty. The protagonist declines the benefits offered by the directors, thinking he doesn't have any current problems and doesn't need any of that, especially if his performance is exceptional. However, he wonders if they are trying to buy him off with these small benefits. After the goodbyes, our boy returns to his room and is approached by Fai, who suggests exchanging contacts. He agrees to exchange contacts but warns that he doesn't read many messages. Meanwhile, the guy who was with Hanley goes to talk to the school director, asking him to look at the proposal made for the protagonist and sign the document. The director is surprised to learn that Pangi asked him to keep an eye on our boy. After signing the document, the guy is happy, thinking this will help the protagonist receive a promotion too. The director then decides to deliver the news to him and calls Pangi. He thanks her for the recommendation and says they will invest many resources in our boy, while provoking Pangi, saying the boy would have gone unnoticed if she hadn't informed them. Pangi is frustrated, realizing that her plan to harm the protagonist backfired. While she's in the room, people who come to talk to her already scold her. Tired of this, she goes for a walk, lamenting that nothing went as planned. When she arrives home, the maid informs her that her father is looking for her, leaving her with a bad feeling. When she gets there, he asks how her relationship with that classmate has been lately. Suddenly, we teleport to the room where the protagonist is taking advantage of the time to write several chapters of his novel, so that when the competition returns, he will have everything ready. When he receives a message from the girl from the beginning, she asks if he is in the finance department of this school. The protagonist responds that he is, but wants to know why she's asking. He thinks it's been a long time since they contacted each other, because with different routines, sometimes it's inevitable. That's why long-distance relationships don't last long. The girl wants to know who is the person from the finance department number 1358. Our boy asks if she participated in this competition too. She says her friends participated just for fun but ended up being defeated early on. However, her friend mentioned that a prodigy appeared in that school and she wanted to know who it was. The protagonist says she only remembered him because of someone in his class and that she really has no heart. The girl responds that it's his fault for always being busy. She comments that her best friend's brother lives in his area and she's going to visit him with her friend this weekend. The girl asks if they can meet. In his thoughts, the protagonist says he misses her. However, he is a bit worried, since he has changed a lot since the last time she saw him. But although it's hard to explain, he'll find a way, thinking that if she didn't come, it would be better, but there's nowhere to run. He will just make the most of it to have fun. Back at Pangi's house, her father calls her. She turns and says she is very tired today and asks if they can talk about it tomorrow. The father says yes, and they will talk later, but that's when her mother arrives. The mother asks if she is tired, and if it's too much stress or if she is thinking about someone. The mother says it's bad to keep things inside and asks her to speak up because she would give her advice. Panji responds that it's nothing much, but she already starts to wonder why the two of them showed up out of nowhere. She says they both commented about her friend and asks what happened. The father explains that he has been trading on the stock market lately, but is losing money. The girl says she heard that there are only pennies left in his stock account and asks why. She starts thinking about investments and Han Lee. Mr. Pan says he lost everything and got scolded a lot by her mother. But Uncle Zhang said that a student at her school did very well in the competition and that he is even an acquaintance of hers. The father asks if she could invite him to come and teach a thing or two. The mother says her head hurts when she looks at her father's investments and that she needs to help. And that if our boy is so good, they might even let him manage the account. Pangi looks shocked. The mother tells her not to be scared, they will take care of him. The girl starts to think that something is wrong and wonders if they think she is with Han Lee. She stands up and says it's impossible. The mother asks why, and Panji responds that our boy is still very young and that it's impossible for him to be that skilled. Besides, it would be improper for her to invite a boy to eat at her house. The mother suggests he might accept and asks why she doesn't ask, also suggesting that she invite a classmate to come with him. The mother decides and asks if he is free tomorrow night, because they will prepare a dinner for everyone. Seeing that there's no way out, Panji agrees. The father and mother continue talking in the living room, wanting her to get along very well with the protagonist and maybe needing to give a little push. The next day, the protagonist wakes up at 8 in the morning exhausted and already has a message from Panji. She says that her father heard about him winning the competition and wants to invite him to help with investments, and that it will be tomorrow at 6 in the evening. The protagonist notices that her tone seems angry and that this was very sudden, suggesting it was the old man's idea. He sends a message saying he understood. Pangi says he didn't understand anything. She says she will invite the president too and suggests they arrange a time to meet. The protagonist is surprised that she invited Tintin and realizes something is up. At that moment, he receives a message from a girl saying they are arriving in the city and asking if he wants to eat something together. She mentions that the genius who won the competition is her friend, confirming that she is very close to him. Her friend says that her brother is arriving. The girl says the protagonist is also arriving. Our boy appears and the girl hears a familiar voice, and when she turns around, she observes how he looks. She comments that it looks like he swapped his head. The protagonist says he just changed his haircut. She gets excited and mentions that she said he was ugly. But it seems that back then he was swollen from the injuries and she didn't see properly. Her friend next to her comments that he is the genius. She introduces herself as Jin Shang, best friend and roommate. Our boy feels a bit embarrassed when someone arrives calling her sister Yang Fei and saying they made her wait a long time. The voice was from the protagonist's classmate. The classmate was in denial, asking why Brother Lee was there holding his sister's hand. She looked and told him to come closer, then introduced Han Lee to her brother Jing Yu. The protagonist thought it was a coincidence. The sister asked why the two were looking at each other like that. The friend suggested that everyone should interrupt suddenly, commenting that they were hungry and should eat something before introducing themselves. The sister handed the bags to the protagonist, saying she trusted him, but Jing didn't like that. He already imagined a dark marriage, saying she would marry a lunatic, and he didn't agree with that. Jing yelled at the protagonist, asking what he wanted with his sister, calling him brother-in-law, and after that, everyone started laughing at him. The protagonist didn't understand anything. The sister smacked her brother on the head. Then the siblings went to get food, while the protagonist and the girl went to find a table. On the way, she tripped and fell into his lap. At that moment, Yun saw the two and had the feeling she saw his true girlfriend. She approached and asked who his friend was, commenting that she looked different because she had never seen her before. The protagonist replied that she was a schoolmate. She deduced that the girl must be someone he dated back in school. She commented that the girl was pretty and questioned why the protagonist hadn't introduced someone like that before. The protagonist didn't like this conversation much, and Yun noticed the situation. She might not have such a good body, but the aura she carried was perfect for a first love. Yun asked why he didn't introduce her. Our boy was about to say something, but she had already introduced herself. She said she was Yun, a classmate of his and a good friend. Asking the girl's name, she said she was Shen Yang and commented that Han Lee was quite popular there, because she was afraid he wouldn't adapt. Manipulative Yun exposed the protagonist, saying he was doing very well, being the best friend to all the girls in the class, and that even the president liked him a lot. Shen asked if it was true and commented that her father also said so, giving him a pinch. Shen Yang aggressively commented, asking if she liked him too and if she had made any progress. The girl thought she shouldn't get upset with our boys' relationships since they had nothing together, but she got annoyed because she had known him longer and had an incredible history with him. Seeing the protagonist and Yun's reaction, she realized their relationship wasn't very advanced. At that moment, her friend appeared, and Shen pulled her by the arm, commenting that she couldn't help with Han Lee because her friend already liked him. The friend asked why she was suddenly pulled and what was happening. Shen asked her to participate in the act and said she would pay her back later. Yun asked why another person was involved and what was going on. She looked at the protagonist, who had a strange expression, wondering what that face was. At that moment, the president arrived too. She asked the protagonist if they were going out together at night and suggested he take a shower. Tintin commented that he said he had friends coming to see him and apparently it was those two. Introducing herself as Hanley's class president, the protagonist wondered if he should play dead. On one side, the president and the friend with whom he wrote the book together. And as much as it seemed like he had an advantage in this situation, he should stay quiet and not make things worse. On the other side, his dream, his childhood crush, and someone he never thought he would have a chance with in life. The good part was that none of them were his real girlfriend, so in theory, there shouldn't be a problem. The bad part was that no matter whom he helped in this situation, he would complicate things with the other. The president asked if she was a schoolmate and if Shen Yang was a legendary ex-girlfriend of that boy. Shen Yang, with 200 IQ, realized she didn't know what the protagonist had told them, but she knew he didn't have an ex-girlfriend, thinking that maybe they were trying to guess things. She said that the two were thinking too much, that Hanley didn't have an ex-girlfriend but just a crush. Yumyun and Tintin were surprised, thinking it was impossible. They asked what she meant by that and if she was the crush. Tintin commented that from what she knew, he wouldn't be secretly admiring anyone, because if he really liked someone, he would say so directly. Shen Yang commented that maybe the women assumed he liked them and therefore kept paying for his meals, saying she heard about it. The protagonist's situation did not improve, and the president, hearing this, became furious and insulted Shen Yang, calling her chubby. She says that Shen Yang doesn't know what she's talking about, asking what this talk is about, giving him food and stating that they are happy just helping. Shen Yang gets mad at being called chubby, but when she's about to insult the president, she notices her body is perfect. Shen Yang turns to complain to the protagonist, asking why he put her in that situation, with a bunch of people wanting to hassle her. The protagonist tries to think of what to do. He gets a crazy idea, puts his hand on his face, and says that he never believed in love at first sight, but now he does, saying he likes her very much and asking if she wants to be his girlfriend, addressing Jing's sister. No one believes it, and she gets all shy and runs away. Shen Yang can't believe it, asking if he likes her, thinking it's impossible. The protagonist says he was joking, considering her a great friend and saying he doesn't want her to feel bad there. Shen thinks her reactions were exaggerated. However, she blames the president for starting the fight. Hanley takes a deep breath and tells the president that he never gave her permission to speak like that, which embarrasses her. The president realizes that the protagonist's line is directly from a line in the book she writes and wonders if he read her book and knows it was her who wrote it. She starts remembering the scenes she wrote, fearing that if he saw that, it's all over for her. Tintin apologizes, admitting she was wrong. Yunyun is surprised, saying she has never seen the president apologize in her life. Shen Yang finds it strange, noticing that the girl was mad. But when the protagonist called her by name, she went quiet, suspecting there's a secret between the two. Shen thinks the best way to get out of the situation is to apologize too. She apologizes to the protagonist, saying she thinks she's also at fault, apologizing to Yunyun for anything she might have said and thanking her for taking care of the protagonist. Yunyun replies that it's okay and thanks her, saying they are all his friends. Our boy then asks the president to take Yunyun with her, saying he let it slide today, but next time he won't say he didn't warn. The president, in shock, responds that she understood, but thinks the protagonist will pay for this. Shen Yang asks the protagonist if he likes the class president. He responds no and asks why she's asking. She says she noticed some interactions between the two, and he replies that he likes her. Shen asks if he prefers delicate girls or thinks her personality is too dominant. The protagonist responds that it's not that he dislikes her personality, but thinks that Shen Yang is much calmer than the president, giving her an admirable princess attitude. Our boy tells her that many people, even loving someone, feel tired because of that love, so he tries to be merciless. Shen Yang asks what he means, and he explains that being merciless is actively talking about all the problems whenever they happen so that the person can fix them. She then asks if he wants to have many conflicts to fix things. The protagonist asks for calm and says he doesn't want it to be sudden. Shen says that when she saw him on the train, she felt he was her type. She was going to wait a little longer, but he is getting more and more surrounded by amazing girls, so she can't hesitate anymore. Shen Yang responds that they can try to improve together without knowing if it will work out or not, and then get married, have kids, buy a house, move to another city, and live together, saying it's simple. The protagonist asks what if things go wrong or if they are not compatible. She responds that it would be just a small mistake, and that loving the wrong person is still love. But if you never love, you will never know who the right person is. The protagonist thinks this is the Shen Yang who captivated him, intelligent, brave, and sincere, and who wouldn't like someone like that. He would like to grow old with her, but he apologizes because he needs to think about it. Nervous, he thinks that deep down he is not a very good person. In 30 years of life, he has seen many tragedies and has many ambitions in his heart. He tells her that to be honest, she is the goddess of his heart, but he is not ready yet. She, with closed pupils, thinks she has been rejected. The president sends several messages to the protagonist, wanting to know if he found out and asking him to stop pretending. The protagonist says he found out and he looked at her package and the little letter that came with it gave everything away. She goes crazy, thinking she should have torn it up completely. He sends a message saying his friend left and that he is planning to buy some things, asking if she wants to go with him. They're getting ready to go to Pangy's house, and the president comments that they will only bring some fruits. The protagonist responds that they are poor students, asking what else she wants to bring, saying to just get the fruits and be done with it. The president says she thinks that's enough and asks why he is staring at her. He replies that he's waiting for her to pay. She retorts that he chose the fruits and should make her pay while turning away. Tintin complains that the protagonist bullied her today, even making her embarrassed, and asks why she has to pay. She says she doesn't mind sometimes paying for his meal, but this time you will have to pay. The protagonist reluctantly agrees. The president looks into the protagonist's wallet and sees that he has quite a bit of money, asking why he keeps asking the girls to pay every day. He explains that this money is to survive until winter, and if it runs out, he's screwed, mentioning that with how much her novel is being viewed, she must be making good money. The protagonist receives some chewing gum to keep his breath fresh, but warns that it might make his mouth sticky. However, they have some peculiar benefits like bioelectricity, happiness, and sweetness. Tintin tries to play it down and says she didn't write the book, just helped a bit, mentioning that it's a different story not only about abusive relationships but also combining some Korean dramas. She admits that when she read it, she paid attention to the most exciting parts, feeling embarrassed and not knowing what to say. To break the ice, she asks what type of girl our boy likes. He replies that he declared his feelings to her friend today and likes that type of girl. The president, incredulous, says no one believes that. The protagonist asks why she's asking if she won't believe it. The president asks what he thinks of Panji. Hanley responds that he thinks she's very good, and Tintin questions if he likes her. He confirms, saying she has the classic beauty of a rich girl, and who wouldn't like a girl like that, questioning the reason for the question. She suggests that he likes Panji just because she's pretty and rich. Tintin wants the protagonist to give indirect compliments to her, but questioning if he imagines she likes women, says she actually likes men. The protagonist says if she thinks all those jokes with Fifi were just to get ideas for the book, what does she think about renting a room tomorrow to broaden their horizons a little? The president, embarrassed, says if he wants to practice, she will be the queen and he will be the servant. Our boy says he will be the dominator. She, surprised, asks if he is belittling her. Tintin says he may be good at fighting, but this is different, requiring psychological skills. The protagonist comments that she is fierce, and she wonders what she is doing. The driver announces that they have arrived, and Han Lee, remembering that he paid for the fruits, says now it's her turn to pay for the taxi. As they get out of the car, she sees Panji in her elite outfit at the billionaire house. Tintin comments that she has only seen a house like this in movies, finding it amazing. Panji responds that it's not that amazing, and asks the protagonist to let her know if anything is missing because she doesn't want to leave anyone unhappy. They enter the house and put on slippers. Han Lee, seeing the piano, comments that he would like to hear Panji play a serenade. She replies that he's dreaming and doesn't deserve that. At that moment, Panji's mother appears, scolding her daughter for talking like that to her friends. The mother greets the protagonist, and the president hides behind Panji. Seeing Tintin, the mother asks if she is who she thinks, saying that her daughter talks a lot about her and that they seem inseparable. The protagonist interrupts, introduces himself, and says he brought fruits, asking where the kitchen is. The woman accepts the gift this time but warns not to bring more or she will have to return the favor. With a peculiar smile, she comments that Han Lee is generous and sensitive, which is very good. In the kitchen, they arrange the fruits while chatting. The protagonist talks about his city, and the mother notices that he is well-mannered and has etiquette, even though he's not a millionaire. However, for her it doesn't matter, as her family has enough money to sustain him for several lifetimes. All she wants is for him to set her daughter straight. Her father appears, all happy that the protagonist has arrived, calling him Professor. The father asks the boy to come quickly for some tea. The mother and daughter are embarrassed and wonder why he was called a professor. The mother then calls everyone to dinner, and it seems the crabs are tied up again. Our boy observes, thinking it's the first time he's been to dinner at someone of the opposite sex's house, and that the atmosphere is not very pleasant. Pangy asks the president where her boldness and joy are, noticing that now she's all shy. She says the situation is different, that her father and mother keep staring and she doesn't know why. The father suggests the kids eat and talk about something else. While talking, the father says that's the prisoner his daughter likes the most and asks her to eat it. Pangy puts it on the president's plate and tells her to eat it, saying it's delicious. The father gets irritated and says the crab is for his daughter, not the president. Hidden pours grape juice into a glass and asks the protagonist if he wants a drink. Accepts. The mother tells her daughter that if she wants to stop drinking Coke and enjoy some wine with her mother, now is the time. Pangy is angry, thinking the Coke was for the guests and not for her. The president asks Pangy if she likes Coke and suggests they enjoy it while the others are drinking. Hanley comments that he's never seen the president drink and wonders if her tolerance is good, worried that she might get drunk on wine as he would have to carry her back. Tintin, already tipsy, tells Pangy to drink too, as she's already drunk. The protagonist, looking at the two, thinks it seems they finished a bottle, but it was just a glass. The president's mother is also getting a bit drunk. Seeing the two hugging, she says it's great to see them like this, as she also had a best friend, but they stopped talking because of a guy and lost contact. The president bangs on the table, saying it's hard to find a good man as many men are trash and hit on all women. Pangi agrees, saying these men have no humanity. The two start hinting at the protagonist. The president says he's a bastard who happily uses her money but grimaces when it's time to use his own. Pangi calls the protagonist a fool, saying he uses her utensils without permission, getting angrier as she speaks. Tintin suggests it's best not to make her angrier, as when the time comes, she will pull out a whip and some candles. And Pangi agrees, saying not to forget the dog collar too. The president's mother is incredulous, not understanding their conversations. The father seems calmer, realizing that maybe they're so angry because both were hurt in love. However, he wants to know when his daughter was hurt in love. He turns to Hanley and says not to give up, as people's perceptions can change. Inviting him to drink more, he says he needs to ask the professor some questions. The protagonist asks him not to call him professor, saying he's not that good. The father responds that it's been a long time since he's seen someone as good as the protagonist. The protagonist asks the father to drink less as he's already getting crazy. The father then cries in Hanley's arms, saying it would be great if he could be his son-in-law. He thinks this is what they call being direct when drunk, as the father isn't even trying to hide it. The father asks the protagonist what's wrong with his daughter, if she's not good enough for him. He replies that he was going to say she's incredible, but the father interrupts, saying that as long as he's interested in his daughter, nothing else matters because he will give all the support possible. The protagonist says the girl he likes is the president and already takes her back home. Back home, the president talks a lot of nonsense and asks for another bottle of wine. She pushes the protagonist, calling him a dog, and he says she's crazy and to stop running because she might fall, saying for him not to worry if she can still jump and run. Hugging a post, she ends up falling into the boy's lap. He realizes it's night and thinks they will have to rent a room because it's too late to go back to the dormitory. At Panji's house, her parents put her to sleep. The father asks if she's completely out, and the mother confirms. She asks to talk to her husband with a serious expression. The father asks why she has that look. Her mother wants to know about the protagonist's business with the president and if her father knew anything beforehand. The father says he just found out as well. The mother bangs on the table and asks about the talk of the protagonist having multiple partners, questioning if the father now likes polygamy. The father says he loves the mother and no one else. She says they will continue with the plan and asks if he handed over the account to the protagonist. Mr. Pan confirms and says that side is resolved since he also gave him a check for $500,000. He explains that he knows it's hard to pursue a girl like her without money, so he gave him some help. The mother considers this idiotic and asks why he gave that extra money when they could have made a revenue account and kept part of the commission. If they come together because of the money, they will only fight over money in the future. The father asks her to calm down, explaining that the $500,000 was part of the boy's salary, and considering their daughter's history, he doubted she would fight over money. He added that they didn't usually argue about it at home and that he was using the money as leverage to help both of them. The mother found it interesting, remembering that before, the father didn't want to approve of Xiao Sai. The father explained that he thought Xiao Sai was very strange, a crazy kid, incapable of taking care of their daughter. Meanwhile, at the hotel, the protagonist analyzed the check he had received. He reflected that with that money, he would have 30% of the profits, while the rest would go to the other investor. And if he managed to recover the lost amount from the investment, he could keep 50% of the profits from then on. Looking at the check, he thought that being rich must be nice, remembering that Mr. Pan had $10 million to invest. At that moment, the president woke up, confused about where she was and if she was dreaming. Noticing the protagonist nearby, she complained and approached him. He said that the dormitories had already closed, so they had to rest there. Without realizing she's trying to find the so-called balance, our boy tried to calm her down, asking her not to get too close. She got mad, accusing him of being a hypocrite, thinking she was in her dreams, while calling him a fake knight and that she hated him. Even so, she admitted knowing that he wasn't a good person. Approaching to kiss him, having drunk so much wine, she then vomited on the protagonist. He promised never to let her drink that much again, and they both went to sleep. When she woke up, Tintin wondered what had happened, recalling that she drank and had a strange dream with our boy at the hotel. Although thinking it was just a dream, she noticed a red stain on the couch, making her nervous. She supposedly thought that her first time had happened the previous night in that place. Meanwhile, the protagonist was at the bank making a deposit when he received an urgent call from the president. She began to suspect that the online guy was the protagonist, but after he sent the number to her, she noticed the numbers didn't match, so she called him. However, our boy had a voice-altering chip, which relieved her when she answered the call and realized the voices weren't the same. Han Li, noticing her relief, joked with her, asking if she was like that because of his voice. The president denied it, explaining that she needed to talk about something. When the protagonist asked what had happened to her boyfriend, she explained that she was confused, remembering that they had drunk wine the night before and then woke up in the hotel with a red stain on the couch. Spitting out all the noodles, he laughed at the situation. However, he asked about her battery percentage, and seeing that it was low, he asked her to save it and look for a written note. Tintin agreed and hummed up, and minutes later, she found a note where our boy complained about her vomiting on him, thus losing the incredible opportunity of sleeping in the bed with her. She was surprised to learn it was just wine. Back at the school dorm, Yoon asked if the president had slept out the night before. She explained that she had slept alone outside, but Yunyan found it strange, remembering that she had left with the protagonist to go to Pangyi's house. Meanwhile, the protagonist was at the bank making a deposit when he received a message from Yunyan, questioning if he had declared his feelings for a girl and taken Tintin to a motel the night before. The protagonist tried to deny it, but suspected that the president had said something foolish. She then sent him a message, complaining that he hadn't charged his phone yet. He explained that he had only charged it to 50% to save money, and she was confused, asking why he needed money. Hanley said it was to do some shopping, but she questioned what he needed to buy. He explained that he needed to buy some tools he had read about in a work, but she called him a pervert. He tried to explain, but the message was blocked by the girl. Our boy says it's alright and asks to see if she leaves a like on this video to help Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.